The courtroom was packed with reporters, lawyers, and onlookers who had gathered to witness what they thought would be just another high-profile case. But little did they know, this day would turn into something none of them could have predicted. The judge, an older man with a stern expression, adjusted his glasses as he scanned the room. He had presided over countless cases, some of them involving big names, but none quite like this one. The courtroom was buzzing with anticipation as Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, stood at the center of it all. Elon wasn't used to being in the spotlight for reasons like this. A tech titan, innovator, and at times, a controversial figure, Musk had never found himself in a legal battle quite like this one. The case was about his social media presence, specifically some of his recent posts on Twitter that had landed him in hot water. It was a battle of words, and now, it was time for the judge to make his decision. "Mr. Musk," the judge began, his voice echoing in the courtroom, "you stand before this court charged with spreading misinformation and misleading investors with your statements on social media. This court finds you guilty and imposes a fine of $1. The room went silent. A fine of $1? It was almost absurd. Everyone in the courtroom exchanged confused glances. Was this a joke? Was the judge serious? Elon Musk stood there, unfazed, his trademark confidence oozing from every pore. He wasn't angry, he wasn't worried, he just stood there, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his lips. It was as if he had been expecting this all along. As the judge looked at him, his expression betrayed a hint of confusion. It was clear that he didn't quite know what to make of Musk's demeanor. After all, someone like Musk, with his billions and vast empire, would usually face far more severe consequences for something like this. But here he was, facing a fine so small it barely registered. So, what was going on? Was this really just about the fine? Or was there something bigger at play here? For a moment, it seemed like time stood still. The lawyers on either side exchanged unsure glances, unsure of how to proceed. The reporters began scribbling down notes, questioning the absurdity of the situation. Everyone waited for Musk to react. After all, what would you do if you were in his shoes? What would you do if you had just been handed a fine so ridiculously low that it almost felt like a slap in the face, yet you knew you held all the cards? And then, Musk did something unexpected. Something that not only surprised everyone in the room, but also turned the entire situation on its head. He smiled. It wasn't a smile of defiance or arrogance. It was a calm, calculated smile, the kind of smile that suggested Musk knew something everyone else didn't. The reporters leaned in, eager for the next move. The judge, still perplexed, frowned slightly. He had never encountered a case like this before. "Mr. Musk, I'm not sure if you understand the gravity of the situation here," the judge said, trying to regain control of the courtroom. "This fine, though small, is a result of your actions, and the implications could have been serious. It's more than just about the money, it's about the message you're sending." Elon didn't flinch. He simply nodded. "I understand," Musk said, his voice steady and calm. "But with all due respect, Your Honor, it's not the fine that matters here." The room fell into complete silence. What was he talking about? Everyone had been so focused on the absurdity of the fine that no one had considered what Musk might actually do with this moment. But Musk wasn't concerned about a fine. The fine was insignificant compared to the opportunity that lay before him. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by Musk's response. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Musk's gaze shifted to the courtroom at large. He looked at the reporters, the lawyers, and even the judge, as if he were carefully calculating his next words. "The truth is, a fine of $1 is trivial. What matters is the bigger picture. What matters is how we change the game from here on out." The judge blinked, clearly not expecting such a response. "And how do you propose we do that?" he asked, his voice edged with skepticism. Musk leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking with the judge's. "Let's put it this way, money, power, influence, none of these are the ultimate currency. The real power lies in how you use those tools. How you shape the narrative. How you create something that goes beyond the surface-level distractions. If you can master that, you can change everything. The judge's expression wavered between confusion and intrigue. He was no longer sure whether this was some kind of game Musk was playing, or if Musk genuinely believed what he was saying. But before the judge could respond, something unexpected happened. Musk stood up, walking confidently toward the front of the courtroom. The reporters' cameras clicked frantically as they tried to capture every moment. Musk, however, didn't seem to care about the cameras or the spectacle. He had already shifted the focus of the room, and now, it was time to make his move. You see, Musk continued, his voice clear and authoritative, we live in a world where everything is about optics. About perception. And today, what the world is going to see is not a billionaire being slapped with a token fine. No, what they'll see is something much bigger. He turned toward the judge. With all due respect, Your Honor, this is not about the fine. This is about the power of influence and how it shapes the way we see the world. You may have handed me a fine, but the real power is in what I do next. The room was silent again, but this time, the silence was heavy. People were beginning to realize that Elon Musk wasn't just responding to the fine. He was shifting the entire narrative. He was in control. And that, in itself, was the real story. What happens next? The judge finally asked, his voice hesitant. Musk smiled again. This time, it was a smile of absolute confidence. Now, he said, his voice booming through the room, we changed the game. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The world had always known Elon Musk as a visionary entrepreneur, a man capable of defying expectations and achieving the seemingly impossible. But what most people didn't see was the person behind the public persona, the man who had spent years battling adversity, pushing boundaries, and facing challenges that would have crushed anyone else. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, Elon Musk was destined to be different. From an early age, he had an insatiable curiosity and an obsession with learning. At just 10 years old, Musk had already developed a passion for technology and computers. He taught himself computer programming, creating and selling a video game called Blaster at the age of 12. While his peers were focused on typical childhood activities, Musk was dreaming up ideas that would one day change the world. Elon's drive and intellect were apparent even in his teenage years. But despite his brilliance, life was far from easy. Growing up in a broken family, with a difficult relationship with his father, Elon's early years were filled with isolation and struggle. He was bullied in school, and often found solace in books, video games, and his own imagination. However, this isolation would later become the fuel for his determination. Musk left South Africa in the mid-90s, determined to find a place where he could make a real impact. He moved to Canada, where he attended Queen's University before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. It was here that his entrepreneurial journey truly began. In the early years of his career, Musk co-founded a software company called Zip2, which provided online city guides for newspapers. The company was sold to Compaq for nearly $300 million in 1999. But instead of resting on his laurels, Musk used the proceeds from that sale to pursue bigger ambitions. His next venture was X.com, an online payment company that later became PayPal. PayPal was acquired by eBay for $1.5 billion in 2002, making Musk a multimillionaire at the age of 31. But instead of retiring and enjoying his newfound wealth, Musk had bigger plans that would alter the course of history. He founded SpaceX in 2002 with the mission of making space travel more affordable and eventually colonizing Mars. With a clear goal in mind, Musk poured his fortune into the company, facing near bankruptcy and countless technical failures. But despite the odds, SpaceX succeeded, becoming the first private company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station in 2012. Musk's relentless pursuit of innovation had paid off, and SpaceX was now a major player in the aerospace industry. But that was just the beginning. Musk's next groundbreaking venture was Tesla, an electric car company that would challenge the automotive industry's reliance on fossil fuels. Tesla's journey wasn't without its challenges either. The company faced production delays, financial struggles, and skepticism from industry experts. Yet, Musk's vision for a sustainable future remained unwavering. He pushed his team to its limits, and against all odds, Tesla eventually became the most valuable automaker in the world, revolutionizing the way the world thought about electric cars. Throughout his career, Musk had earned a reputation for his boldness and his willingness to take risks. Whether it was launching a car into space, developing the Hyperloop transportation system, or planning to send humans to Mars, Musk's ambitions seemed limitless. But his personality, often described as eccentric, stubborn, and even controversial, also made him a polarizing figure. Elon Musk's rise to power wasn't just about his intelligence or his business acumen. It was about his ability to challenge the status quo, to take on industries that had been established for decades, and to make the impossible seem possible. But the road to success had not been easy. Musk had faced personal and professional setbacks, public criticism, and moments when his companies were on the brink of collapse. Yet, each time, he managed to rise from the ashes, his resilience and determination pushing him forward. As he stood in the courtroom that day, Elon Musk wasn't just a man facing a fine. He was a man who had built an empire from the ground up, a man who had faced challenges that most people couldn't even imagine, and a man who had the power to change the world. But despite all his success, there was something different about this case. This wasn't just about technology or business, this was about something deeper, something more personal. Musk had spent years being scrutinized for his outspokenness on social media, his unconventional methods, and his larger-than-life persona. But in this moment, as the judge had handed down that absurd $1 fine, Musk saw an opportunity. The fine wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it was a challenge, a test of his ability to take control of the narrative and show the world just how much influence he truly had. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Musk had prepared for this moment in his own unique way. He knew that the media would be watching, and that every move he made would be scrutinized. But he also knew that this was an opportunity to show the world that he was more than just a tech mogul, he was a master of strategy, of influence, and of turning situations to his advantage. The courtroom had been a stage, and Elon Musk had played his role to perfection. By the time the judge had issued the fine, Musk had already begun to think several steps ahead. The fine was insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It was the perfect distraction, a way to shift the focus from the real issue at hand, the immense power that Musk wielded. He wasn't just a billionaire with a lot of money, he was a man who had reshaped entire industries, a man whose decisions could alter the course of history. And now, Musk was about to show the world just how far his influence truly extended. But to understand how Elon Musk would turn the tables in this bizarre courtroom drama, it was important to first understand the man behind the empire. His rise from an ambitious young entrepreneur to the world's most influential innovator was a story of resilience, risk, and relentless pursuit of the extraordinary. And in the next chapter, that story would take another unexpected turn. The courtroom was tense. Everyone present, lawyers, reporters, spectators, held their breath, waiting for the next move. Elon Musk, the man who had just been slapped with a symbolic fine of $1, wasn't reacting the way anyone had expected. Instead of frustration or anger, he wore an almost calculated calmness. This wasn't just any trial, it was a spectacle. As the judge, still clearly bewildered by the fine, struggled to regain control, Musk's demeanor had only one purpose, to set the stage for something much larger. The fine, a mere token in the grand scheme of his empire, had been issued, but Musk knew it was never about the money. In fact, the $1 fine had become the perfect bait to draw the world's attention. The judge, who had been hoping to wrap up the case with a simple verdict, now realized the courtroom drama was far from over. He glanced around, taking in the expressions of the room. Some were confused, some were intrigued, and some were downright puzzled. Musk had defied the expectation of anyone in the room. Instead of a man caught in a scandal, here stood a man who appeared as if he were in complete control of the situation. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Mr. Musk, I'm not sure what you're trying to say. A fine is a fine. Regardless of the amount, this is the ruling. The implications of your actions were clear, and you're fortunate to be walking away with only a $1 fine." Musk, still standing tall, tilted his head slightly, looking at the judge with an almost amused expression. "You're right," he said. "A fine is a fine. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not the fine that matters here. It's the message, and the narrative you've just set in motion." The room went quiet. The reporters, who had been snapping photos throughout the trial, paused for a moment. Musk's words hung in the air, stirring something in the crowd. The message? What message was he talking about? Before anyone could react, Musk turned to the side, addressing the entire room now. "Let's take a moment to think about what's actually happening here. I'm Elon Musk. I've built companies that send people to space, companies that revolutionize the car industry. I've been in the public eye for decades, and I'm used to controversy. But this? This is new." The judge was no longer in control of the conversation. Musk's confidence was contagious, and the spectators began leaning forward, eager for the next twist in the drama. "Do you really think this $1 fine is about justice? Or do you think it's just part of a narrative that the media wants to sell? Think about it," Musk continued, his voice now carrying through the courtroom like a rallying cry. "The media loves to cover controversy. The more they sensationalize, the more clicks, the more views. The more they dissect, the more the story continues to be fed into the public consciousness. A fine is a symbol of something bigger." The judge, still trying to keep the proceedings on track, interjected. "Mr. Musk, I don't think you're in a position to lecture the court about how the media operates. You're here because of your actions, not because of any external forces." But Musk wasn't deterred. He knew exactly what he was doing. "Actually, Your Honor, that's precisely my point. The court, the media, and even the public are all caught in a story that's bigger than any of us. And that story is being shaped right here, right now." He paused for effect, allowing the room to absorb his words. "You see, the reason I'm standing here with a fine of $1 is because someone wanted to control the narrative. Someone wanted to make me look like the villain. They wanted to put me in a box and say, this is who Elon Musk is. But what if the story could be something entirely different? What if this trial wasn't about me being punished, but about me taking back control?" Musk's words were no longer just a response to the fine. He was changing the game in real time, reshaping the public's perception of the trial. He was using the courtroom as a platform, as a stage to deliver a message far beyond what anyone expected. The media, once fixated on the fine, were now paying attention to Musk's words. His ability to flip the situation was mesmerizing. Instead of a man who had just been slapped with a penalty, he was becoming a symbol of someone who knew how to turn even the most absurd situations into opportunities. "Let's consider the facts," Musk continued, his voice unwavering. "The fine is a distraction. The real story here is not about the punishment, it's about the power we all have to shape the narrative. People like me, with influence and resources, are the ones who control the narrative. And it's time for us to stop being passive consumers of information. We need to take control and start questioning the stories we're told." For a brief moment, there was a sense of chaos in the room. Some of the reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, while others exchanged puzzled looks. The judge, clearly out of his depth, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mr. Musk," the judge finally said, attempting to steer the courtroom back to order, "I understand your point, but this is not the time or place for a discussion about media influence. We are here to discuss the charges against you and the punishment." Elon Musk wasn't having any of it. With a knowing smile, he turned back to the judge and spoke calmly. "I understand. But you're missing the bigger picture. This trial. This fine. It's part of a story that has yet to unfold fully. What happens next is what truly matters. Musk's tone was different now. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't confrontational. It was the tone of someone who was on the brink of a massive shift. A change in the story that would not just affect him, but the world at large. The judge, now realizing that he was losing control of the narrative, adjusted his glasses and motioned to the court stenographer to take note. He had no idea what Musk was about to do, but something told him that this case was far from over. "Very well," the judge said, his voice laced with uncertainty. "The case is concluded for today. We will reconvene at a later time." As the gavel came down, the courtroom erupted into whispers. Reporters flooded the space, rushing to interview lawyers, analysts, and anyone they could get to comment on the shocking turn of events. But Musk was already walking out of the courtroom, his mind already on the next phase of his plan. The fine, the trial, even the judge, none of it mattered anymore. He had already flipped the script, and the world would soon know it. As Musk exited the courtroom, he was met by a throng of reporters. But he didn't stop to answer questions. Instead, he paused for a brief moment and addressed the cameras with a single statement. "The game has just begun," he said, and with that, he walked into the chaos, fully aware that the world was now watching him. The moment Musk walked out of the courtroom, his mind was already at work. The fine, the trial, those were nothing more than stepping stones, little blips on the radar. The true game was about to begin. Musk had always known that the media loved a good spectacle, and if they wanted a story, he would give them one. But this time, it wouldn't be the one they were expecting. As Musk made his way through the sea of reporters outside the courthouse, the usual questions came flying at him, questions about the fine, about the trial, about the judge's decision. But Musk didn't answer them. Instead, he paused in front of the cameras, his signature confident smile playing across his face. "You want a story," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "I'll give you one." In that moment, the crowd fell silent, cameras focused on him, and the media frenzy paused. Musk had done it again. He had shifted the focus from what was supposed to be a routine trial into an entirely new narrative. But what exactly was his plan? Elon Musk was never one to back down when it came to controlling a situation. And this was no different. The $1 fine, an amount so insignificant it could hardly be called a penalty, had been the perfect trigger. He had known that if he accepted the fine without comment, the media would have only focused on the trivial nature of the punishment. But Musk saw an opportunity to make the story far bigger, far more impactful. For days after the trial, headlines around the world were dominated by Musk's statement outside the courthouse. "Musk turns $1 fine into worldwide media storm," was plastered across social media and news outlets. But that wasn't enough for him. This was only the beginning. Musk knew that by igniting curiosity, he could leverage the power of public perception. He wasn't just Elon Musk anymore, he was a symbol, a larger-than-life figure who could bend narratives to his will. It wasn't about the fine. It was about the message he could send. The morning after the trial, Musk sent out a simple tweet that would become the focal point of the entire media storm. "Sometimes the fine isn't the price you pay, it's the story you rewrite." It wasn't long before the tweet went viral. Musk's words were shared millions of times, analyzed by experts, and dissected by journalists. The comment was cryptic yet powerful, an invitation to think deeper. What was Musk really trying to say? Why had he made such a bold statement? The world was on edge, waiting for the next chapter of this unfolding saga. At first glance, the tweet appeared to be just another cryptic thought from Musk, who was known for his eccentric social media presence. But the more people thought about it, the more it seemed like something much bigger. Had Musk just hinted at his next move? Was this just the beginning of a new strategy, one that would redefine his public image once again? Behind the scenes, Musk's closest advisors and team members were working in overdrive. They had anticipated this moment for months, having studied the media's response to Musk's every move, every tweet, every public appearance. This trial was more than a legal battle, it was a carefully orchestrated chess move in a larger game. Musk's team wasn't just made up of engineers, scientists, and business minds, they were strategists in their own right. They had watched how the media had treated Musk in the past, the constant criticisms, the sensationalism, the obsession with his every move. They had seen how the public often reduced him to a headline rather than understanding the vision behind his actions. Now, it was time for Musk to shift the power back to himself, and he had the right people to help him do it. Get ready for Phase 2, Musk had told his team after the trial. Let's show them how to tell a story. The plan was already set in motion. They had identified key media outlets, influencers, and public figures who could amplify Musk's message, turning the spotlight onto the deeper story he wanted to tell. The very next day, Musk made headlines again. But this time, it wasn't just about a courtroom drama. This time, he had taken his message a step further. He announced, via social media and a press release, that he would be hosting a live broadcast, a global town hall event. This wouldn't be your average corporate address or press conference. Musk promised that during the broadcast, he would unveil something bigger than any courtroom drama. The media exploded with speculation. What could this new announcement be? Was Musk preparing to announce a new business venture? A groundbreaking product? A partnership with world leaders? The guessing game began, and Musk let the uncertainty build. Meanwhile, his followers online speculated wildly. Twitter was flooded with theories, Reddit threads turned into full-blown investigations, and journalists scrambled to piece together clues from Musk's past statements, tweets, and actions. No one had any concrete answers, but that was the point. Musk was taking them on a journey, leading the world to a climax only he knew was coming. The day of the town hall event arrived, and anticipation was at a fever pitch. Thousands of viewers tuned in from around the world. The stage was set in a sleek, minimalist style. Musk stood at the center, dressed in his typical casual attire, black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. He had a confident, yet mysterious air about him, as if he were about to drop a bombshell. When the broadcast began, Musk wasted no time. You know, people often talk about the power of stories, he said, addressing the camera directly. But what if we had the power to rewrite them? What if we didn't have to follow the scripts that were handed to us? The audience leaned in, waiting for more. Earlier this week, I was fined $1. A small amount, right? But what most of you didn't see was what came next, the opportunity to turn that fine into a moment of change. A moment when I could show the world that the narrative can be rewritten by the people who are brave enough to take control of it. He paused for effect, allowing the words to sink in. The $1 fine. That was just a distraction, Musk continued. What's more important is what happens next, the story we're all a part of, whether we know it or not. We have the power to take our stories and make them into something better, something more meaningful. It was clear now. Musk wasn't just speaking about his own case anymore. He was speaking about all of us, about the power of individuals to shape the world around them, to challenge norms, and to rewrite the narratives that define us. But the biggest question, Musk said with a smile, is whether we have the courage to take control of that narrative when it's our turn. By the end of the broadcast, Musk's message had done exactly what he intended, it had ignited a conversation, sparked a fire in the hearts and minds of millions. The $1 fine was now a distant memory, overshadowed by the bigger picture Musk had painted. The world was no longer fixated on the courtroom. It was now focused on the idea that Musk had introduced, about control, about power, about shaping the story. In the following weeks, the ripple effect was undeniable. Musk's influence spread across the globe as people began to reconsider their relationship with the narratives they consumed. They started questioning their role in the stories being told, and many began to challenge the conventional ways in which news and information were presented. As for Musk, he had turned the tables, not only in the courtroom, but in the media, in the public's perception, and in the very story of his life. The media storm that followed Elon Musk's town hall announcement was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Headlines weren't just about the $1 fine or his legal victory, they were about something far bigger, his call to action. Musk had turned a minor courtroom case into a global conversation about control, power, and narrative. Now, the world was watching as Musk began to take full advantage of the wave he had created. As the media outlets scrambled to cover every angle of Musk's latest move, the internet was awash with opinions. People from all walks of life, politicians, influencers, analysts, and everyday citizens, began to ask the same questions: was Musk right? Could anyone truly take control of their own story? Or was this just another eccentric Musk moment? But the most important question remained unanswered: what was Musk going to do next? It wasn't just the media that was caught up in Musk's rhetoric. Everyday people, those who had tuned into the live broadcast, those who had seen the viral tweets, began to take Musk's message to heart. Social media exploded with discussions, as individuals started questioning the narratives they had always accepted. For many, Musk's words acted as a wake-up call. Do we really have the power to rewrite our stories? One tweet asked. What if we stopped being passive consumers of news and actually shaped the conversation ourselves? Hashtags like #RewriteYourStory and #PowerToChange began trending globally. Ordinary people from all over the world started posting about their personal experiences with control, change, and their own ability to shape their lives. As the hashtag spread, Musk's words sparked real-world action. People began to share their stories of overcoming obstacles, breaking through barriers, and taking charge of their own destinies. It was as if Musk's statement had lit a fire under an entire generation, encouraging them to seize control of their own narratives. But amidst the euphoria, there was also skepticism. Was this all just a marketing stunt? Some critics argued that Musk was merely using his influence to promote his businesses and his personal brand. Others questioned whether he truly believed in the power of the individual, or if this was just another part of his carefully crafted image. While Musk's supporters rallied behind his message, the critics were quick to point out the contradictions. How could Musk, someone with immense wealth and influence, truly understand the struggles of the average person? How could he preach about rewriting narratives when his own wealth and power were built on the backs of employees, shareholders, and countless systems that existed before him? The controversy surrounding Musk's words began to grow. Some called his message hypocritical. Others were quick to label him as out of touch with the real struggles of those who didn't have access to the same resources he did. Yet, despite the backlash, Musk's influence only grew stronger. He had become the center of a global conversation, one that was about much more than just him. Musk's narrative had become infectious. It was no longer about the fine. It wasn't about the trial. It was about the message, the ability to challenge the status quo, to break free from the shackles of society's expectations, and to write your own destiny. While many embraced Musk's words, others were deeply critical. Political pundits questioned the motives behind Musk's latest move, seeing it as a calculated effort to distract from his more controversial actions in the past. Some viewed Musk as a populist figure trying to capitalize on the masses' desire for change, using his rhetoric as a tool to solidify his power. But Musk wasn't fazed. He didn't back down. Instead, he doubled down. In the weeks following the broadcast, he continued to push his message with even more intensity. He began publishing op-eds in major publications, further expanding on his beliefs about the power of personal agency, the need for individuals to challenge authority, and the importance of rewriting the narratives that had been handed to them by society. During an interview with a major news outlet, Musk was asked point-blank whether he thought his comments had been misunderstood. "I think people are missing the point," he responded. "This isn't about me. It's about you, the people. You're the ones who have the power to change things, not just sit back and accept whatever narrative the world gives you. It's about creating a story that's yours, one that you control. And if we all start doing that, imagine the kind of world we can create." Musk's words were stirring, but they were also polarizing. Critics accused him of being manipulative, of turning his personal battles into a larger-than-life spectacle designed to distract from his own problems. But to his supporters, Musk's message was empowering. "I've always admired Elon for his ability to think differently," one of his loyal followers tweeted. "Now he's giving us all permission to think outside the box. To take control of our own stories." For every critic, there was a supporter, and for every supporter, there was a critic. But no matter what, the conversation Musk had sparked was unstoppable. The media was hooked. The public was engaged. And Musk was the orchestrator of it all. Elon Musk wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Behind the scenes, Musk's team was working feverishly on his next big move, something that would take his message to an entirely new level. His words had ignited the world's imagination, and now it was time for action. Musk was preparing to launch a new initiative, something that would allow individuals to actively engage with the narrative he had begun to create. He wasn't just going to talk about rewriting stories, he was going to give the world the tools to do it themselves. The details were still under wraps, but Musk was preparing to announce a revolutionary new platform that would allow people to connect, share their stories, and challenge the narratives that had been imposed on them. It wasn't just a social media platform, it was a new way of thinking, a new way of interacting with the world. Musk's team was already in talks with top tech developers, influencers, and celebrities, all of whom were eager to be part of the movement. In the coming months, Musk would launch a global campaign to promote the platform, urging people to take control of their own stories. It was the next logical step in his grand vision, a vision where individuals weren't just consumers of information but creators of it. It was a vision where everyone had a seat at the table and the power to rewrite the script. And Musk? He would remain at the helm, guiding the narrative, shaping the story, and proving that when you control the story, you control the world. Elon Musk stood before the cameras again, but this time, there was no trial, no fine, and no courtroom drama. Instead, there was something far more significant, his next big move. The world was still buzzing about his previous statements, about his call to rewrite the narrative. Now, it was time for Musk to deliver on his promise. The live stream began, and as expected, thousands of people from around the world tuned in. Musk's face filled the screen, calm and focused, as usual. But this time, the setting was different. Behind him, the sleek, minimalist design of a modern studio with massive screens and interactive tech illuminated the space. Musk stood at the heart of it, his presence commanding the attention of the entire world. "This is more than just an announcement," Musk began, his voice steady but filled with intensity. "This is a revolution." The viewers sat up straighter in their seats, their screens aglow with anticipation. "I said something recently," Musk continued. "That sometimes, the price you pay isn't a fine, it's a story. And what I meant by that is simple, we live in a world where narratives are created for us, by the media, by corporations, by governments. But what if we could take control of those narratives? What if the people, you, could take charge of how the story is told? Not just in your own life, but globally." He paused for effect, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. "For too long, we've been passive. We've accepted the stories written for us. But we can't wait for others to write the future. We need to write it ourselves." The cameras zoomed in as Musk stepped aside. A massive digital display behind him flickered to life, showing a sleek interface that looked like something straight out of a science fiction movie. The screen was filled with icons, vibrant with colors, resembling a futuristic platform. "This," Musk said, "is our platform for rewriting the story." The world gasped. The platform he was unveiling wasn't just a social media app or a content-sharing site, it was a space that allowed people to build their own narratives. Users would create dynamic, interactive stories about their lives, their ideas, their visions, and share them with the world. The catch? The platform would allow others to engage, interact, and shape those stories in real time. It was a social experience, but it was unlike anything ever seen before. Musk went on to explain how this new platform would empower individuals by providing them with unprecedented tools to tell their stories. Through immersive storytelling technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence, users could shape not just the words of their story, but the very experience itself. The platform was built on the idea that everyone had a voice, and everyone could contribute to the global narrative. The focus was on creative freedom and personal expression, and it was designed to break away from traditional media formats. No longer would people be mere consumers of news or entertainment, they would be creators, authors of their own destinies. As Musk's announcement spread, reactions were mixed. While his supporters hailed the new platform as a groundbreaking step toward democratizing the media and empowering the public, the critics were quick to voice concerns. "Who controls the narrative?" asked one prominent journalist in a televised debate. "Is this just another way for Musk to control the masses? How do we know this platform won't be used for manipulation?" Others pointed out the potential dangers of such a platform. What if people used it to spread misinformation? What if it became a breeding ground for echo chambers, where only the most popular narratives rose to the surface? Was this platform really about rewriting the story, or was it just another tool to further Musk's personal brand? But Musk was prepared for the backlash. He had anticipated it. As usual, he didn't shy away from controversy, he embraced it. "Every revolution is met with resistance," Musk said in a follow-up interview. "The real question is, are we going to wait for someone else to write our story, or are we going to take control?" Soon, the platform was live, and the first wave of users began to create their stories. The idea of a digital space where people could shape the narrative of their lives, share their dreams, struggles, and ambitions, was instantly captivating. Stories ranged from personal triumphs to reflections on societal issues, from artistic projects to new visions for the future. It was a digital world full of endless possibilities, and the stories were unlike anything ever shared before. One viral story that caught the attention of millions came from a young woman named Lily, who had struggled with anxiety for most of her life. In her story, she created a virtual world that represented her mental health journey. The audience could walk through a series of landscapes that symbolized her struggles, dark, stormy scenes representing her battles with anxiety, followed by moments of clarity, where the environment began to transform into bright, peaceful landscapes. The story wasn't just a static post, it was interactive, engaging, and powerful. The platform wasn't just a place to tell stories, it was a place to experience them in a deeply personal way. Musk's idea was working. People were connecting on a deeper level than ever before. The potential for this platform to change the way people engaged with their own lives, and with each other, was undeniable. Musk had created something that allowed individuals to tell their stories not just in words, but in experience. It wasn't just about what you said, it was about what you could create. As more people began to use the platform, a global movement started to take shape. The concept of rewriting the story expanded beyond just individual narratives, it began to touch on larger social issues. People used the platform to challenge the status quo, to share their visions for a better world. The power of personal stories intersected with collective action. The platform became a space where marginalized voices found an audience, where activists and creators collaborated to spread messages of change. It wasn't just a place for entertainment, it became a place for social movements to take root. From climate change activism to political reform, the platform was quickly becoming the digital town square of the 21st century. One of the most notable stories that surfaced was a series of interactive documentaries on climate change, created by a collective of young environmental activists. Through immersive experiences, viewers could walk through virtual forests being destroyed by deforestation, or dive into oceans that were slowly being poisoned by pollution. The power of immersive storytelling combined with the global reach of Musk's platform meant that these stories didn't just inform, they inspired action. But there were still critics. Some were skeptical of the platform's potential to spark meaningful change, questioning whether it was truly a space for empowerment or just another way for Musk to profit. Others wondered if the overwhelming flow of content would dilute the message, turning meaningful stories into noise. Despite the criticism, Musk remained undeterred. He had built a platform that was already reshaping the way stories were told, but he knew that this was only the beginning. His ultimate vision was far grander than any single platform or movement. It was about creating a new way of thinking. The future isn't just about technology, Musk said in one of his public addresses. It's about how we use that technology to bring people together, to elevate voices that have been silenced, to create a world where the stories that matter are the ones we choose to tell. For Musk, this wasn't just business. It wasn't even about the platform itself. It was about creating a society where people could finally take control of their own narratives and, in doing so, take control of their futures. And as his vision grew, so did his influence. The revolution had begun, and there was no turning back. The world was no longer the same. Thanks to Elon Musk's new platform, the global conversation had shifted. What started as an idea about rewriting the narrative had snowballed into a movement, one that gave power back to the individual and democratized storytelling. But with great power came even greater scrutiny. As Musk's vision gained momentum, so did the critics, and a new challenge was on the horizon. How would he handle the growing complexity of his influence? The early days of Musk's platform were thrilling. The digital town square was buzzing with creativity and self-expression. Stories of personal triumphs and societal change poured in from every corner of the globe. People were sharing everything from their struggles with mental health to their vision for a more sustainable future. The platform became a virtual utopia for those wanting to be heard. But as the flood of stories continued, an inevitable question began to emerge: could Musk's platform continue to manage this much creativity, and more importantly, this much responsibility? Within just a few months of launching, Musk's platform had gained millions of users. Stories, videos, interactive experiences, and more flooded the site daily, creating an overwhelming amount of content. It became a sea of voices, each one clamoring for attention, each one trying to stand out in an ever-growing ocean of stories. The platform's algorithms were struggling to keep up with the sheer volume. As more people interacted with stories, more data was created. The system began to face serious strain. Some users complained that the content they interacted with was increasingly tailored to what the algorithm thought they would like, rather than allowing them to explore new ideas or diverse viewpoints. Is this still about rewriting the story? One user posted. Or is it just about the algorithm pushing whatever fits in a bubble? Critics argued that the platform, while revolutionary in its design, was beginning to look like every other social media network, filled with echo chambers, driven by engagement metrics, and controlled by unseen forces, algorithms, rather than human intention. Musk, always the problem solver, was well aware of these issues, and in typical fashion, he didn't shy away from addressing them head-on. "We've created something amazing here," Musk said in a live-streamed interview. "But we've also learned that we're dealing with a new kind of power. The power to share, to connect, to shape reality. And with power comes responsibility. It's up to us to make sure the platform is used in ways that empower, not divide." The more Musk spoke about responsibility, the more the conversation shifted from empowerment to accountability. What Musk had once envisioned as a space for boundless self-expression was now under intense scrutiny, with people asking whether the very systems designed to give them more control over their stories were, in fact, undermining the authenticity of those stories. "Are we really controlling our narratives?" one post asked. "Or are we just giving them to the algorithm?" Musk's platform, designed to break free from traditional media control, now seemed to be falling into the same patterns as every other digital platform: optimization for engagement. As users struggled to be heard, some turned to more dramatic forms of storytelling, polarizing opinions, controversy, and sensationalism, in hopes of cutting through the noise. The result was an increasingly divisive environment. One viral story that exemplified this shift was a series of highly political, deeply divisive narratives from multiple users on both sides of the political spectrum. What started as passionate storytelling soon devolved into a battleground of extreme rhetoric, each story pushing for more likes, more comments, more attention. Instead of bringing people together, these divisive stories began to pull people apart. The algorithm, designed to maximize user engagement, rewarded these intense, polarizing narratives, causing them to spread faster than any positive message. Critics argued that Musk's platform, like all others, was ultimately rewarding attention-seeking behavior rather than thoughtful dialogue. Musk had unintentionally created a digital ecosystem where voices of dissent, anger, and conflict were amplified. Musk, ever the innovator, wasn't blind to these issues. For the first time in his career, he found himself at a crossroads. The platform he had built, intended to be a place for free expression and global empowerment, was now threatened by the same algorithmic traps that had taken down so many other social media giants before it. In an exclusive interview with a leading tech journalist, Musk faced the tough questions head-on. "You said that this platform would empower people to control their own narratives, but now it seems to be amplifying the very problems you're trying to solve," the interviewer pointed out. "Is this platform really what you envisioned, or has it turned into something else?" Musk paused for a moment, looking at the screen. He had no easy answers. "The truth is, I'm learning just like everyone else. We set out to create something groundbreaking, but we never could have predicted just how complex this kind of power would be. We've created a tool that can reshape the world, but we need to make sure it's being used in a way that helps people, rather than divides them." It was in that moment that Musk revealed his next big initiative, the Rebalance Project. This initiative aimed to reshape the platform's algorithm. Rather than rewarding divisive content and sensationalism, Musk's team would build an entirely new system, one designed to prioritize authenticity, creativity, and meaningful engagement. "We're going to take the power out of the hands of the algorithm and put it back in the hands of the people," Musk declared. "The algorithm will no longer decide what you see. You will." As expected, the announcement was met with both praise and skepticism. Supporters of Musk applauded the decision, eager to see how the Rebalance Project would address the growing concerns. "You've got to admire Elon for not backing down," one tweet read. "He's actually listening to the people." But skeptics questioned whether Musk was simply trying to fix something that could never be fixed. Was this new algorithm simply another way to protect his platform's brand? Was it really possible to change the course of an entire digital ecosystem that had been designed to reward attention-seeking behavior? "The question is," one critic wrote, "can you really change the nature of the beast? Or are we just seeing another PR stunt?" Musk, as always, was undeterred. He wasn't just launching a new algorithm, he was launching a movement. "This is bigger than the platform itself," he said during a press conference. "This is about changing the very way we interact with technology, with each other. It's about making the internet work for us, not the other way around." As the Rebalance Project began to roll out, it was clear that Musk's influence was shifting once again. The conversation was no longer about a fine or a courtroom battle. It was about something much more profound, a new way of living, a new way of connecting, and a new way of rewriting the narrative. The global stage was set. The world was waiting to see if Musk's grand vision could truly change the way we interact with the stories of our lives, or if the complexities of power, responsibility, and technology would prove too much to overcome. But one thing was clear, Elon Musk was not about to let go of the narrative. Not now, not ever. Elon Musk wasn't one to back down. He'd faced challenges before, from rockets that nearly exploded to groundbreaking products that seemed too ambitious to succeed. But this time was different. The world was watching as he undertook a mission to reshape the very digital fabric of society. The Rebalance Project was more than a technical fix, it was Musk's response to a growing concern, that a platform built to empower individuals had, inadvertently, begun to do the opposite. Musk's announcement about the Rebalance Project had stirred the digital world into action. Supporters rallied behind the concept, eager to see how it would reshape the platform. Critics, however, remained skeptical, questioning whether Musk could actually change the entrenched dynamics of the platform in a meaningful way. But Musk was resolute, and he had already begun assembling a team of engineers, designers, and philosophers, yes, philosophers, who would help create the future he envisioned. It took several weeks for Musk's team to roll out the first phase of the Rebalance project, but when it happened, it was nothing short of revolutionary. The algorithm that had previously prioritized engagement, likes, shares, and comments, was completely overhauled. Instead of merely amplifying popular content, it now took into account a broader range of factors, focusing on the quality of interaction over the quantity. At the heart of the new algorithm was one simple principle: authenticity. If a story was shared with a personal touch, if it invited real engagement from the audience, whether that was through conversation, collaboration, or reflection, then it would be promoted. Great content isn't about going viral, Musk said during a live demonstration of the new system. It's about creating something that adds value, that makes a real difference in someone's life. The shift was dramatic. Content that had once flooded the platform, sensational headlines, divisive opinions, and polarizing content, began to recede. Instead, heartfelt stories, thoughtful reflections, and well-crafted ideas started to rise to the surface. Users found themselves discovering new voices, people they had never encountered before, but who shared deep, meaningful insights about the world. The change wasn't just algorithmic. It was cultural. A new wave of creators emerged, artists, activists, and philosophers, whose stories were grounded in authenticity rather than spectacle. For the first time, the platform felt less like a competition for attention and more like a place where people could truly connect. As the Rebalance project took hold, the reactions were swift. Initially, there was confusion. Users had grown accustomed to the old system, where the algorithm seemed to know what they wanted before they did. Now, with the new changes, some felt lost, unsure of how to navigate this unfamiliar landscape. But that feeling quickly gave way to excitement. One of the first major success stories of the new algorithm came from a user named Carla, a documentary filmmaker from rural Alaska. Carla had always struggled to get her work seen by a large audience. Her stories were intimate, focused on the lives of indigenous people in the Alaskan wilderness, and her approach was quiet, contemplative, rather than sensational. Under the old system, her work was often overshadowed by louder, more attention-grabbing content. But with the Rebalance project, her documentary series, The Forgotten Voices, gained incredible traction. Her followers weren't just passive viewers, they engaged with the content, asking questions, sharing their own experiences, and discussing the complex issues she raised. The conversation wasn't just about the film, it was about the deeper themes of preservation, culture, and respect. Carla's success was a clear signal that Musk's vision was beginning to work. Content that had previously struggled to gain attention was now thriving, not because it played into the algorithm's rules, but because it resonated with people on a human level. But as the positive feedback rolled in, the platform was also becoming a battleground. Long-time users who had become accustomed to the old way of doing things found themselves at odds with the new system. For them, the changes felt like a betrayal. They had spent years crafting content that worked well with the previous algorithm, and now they had to adjust to an entirely new set of rules. As much as Musk had hoped to reduce division, the new system inadvertently sparked a different kind of polarization, one rooted in the very principle of authenticity. There were those who embraced the new era of deeper, more meaningful content, and there were those who felt that the algorithm's push for authenticity was, in itself, a kind of censorship. Some users argued that the new system favored certain voices over others. They claimed that those who had been able to master the art of creating authentic stories were now at a distinct advantage, while others, especially those who relied on bold, eye-catching content, were left in the dust. The debates on the platform became heated, as some users argued that the Rebalance project was, in fact, creating new forms of inequality. "You can't just expect everyone to be authentic," one user posted. "What if my story is best told through a meme, or through satire? Is that not valuable?" Musk, as expected, did not shy away from the criticisms. In fact, he doubled down, explaining that the ultimate goal was not to suppress any form of expression, but to encourage a space where people could share their stories without the pressure to go viral or conform to the demands of an algorithm designed purely for profit. "We're not trying to take away memes, or humor, or satire," Musk said in a live stream. "What we're doing is giving people a way to share real stories, the kind of stories that don't need to be sensational to matter. I believe there's a place for all kinds of content, but we're creating a system that prioritizes connection over spectacle." But for some users, the message wasn't so clear. They felt that, despite Musk's words, the system still rewarded a narrow definition of authenticity, one that was bound to leave certain voices behind. As the debate over authenticity and content standards raged on, one thing became clear: the rise of the writers, creators who focused on thoughtful, detailed storytelling, was undeniable. These writers were the new stars of the platform, and they weren't just telling personal stories, they were tackling global issues with nuance and insight. One such writer was Marcus, a political commentator whose blog posts had long been relegated to obscurity. Under the old system, his nuanced takes on global politics and economic disparity had been drowned out by sensational headlines. But with the new algorithm prioritizing thoughtful discourse, his work began to gain traction. His series, The Forgotten Economy, explored the hidden factors contributing to economic inequality around the world. It wasn't a flashy piece filled with dramatic headlines, it was deep, thoughtful, and well-researched. But it was precisely this quality that made it resonate with people. Marcus's work inspired hundreds of discussions, collaborations, and even policy proposals from within the platform. The influence of these new writers began to shift the broader conversation in ways that Musk had always envisioned. For the first time in a long while, people were thinking critically about issues that mattered: climate change, poverty, racial inequality, without the noise of clickbait distracting them. As the Rebalance project unfolded, Musk found himself facing a new set of challenges. The platform had become more than just a place for individuals to tell their stories, it had become a space where ideas were incubated, where important conversations were sparked, and where social movements were born. But the road to transformation was far from smooth. Musk knew that this was only the beginning. The platform needed to evolve continually, adapting to new challenges, new voices, and new needs. And he couldn't do it alone. "I don't have all the answers," Musk admitted during a public speech. "But I know one thing: if we all work together, we can make this platform what it was always meant to be, a place where the truth can be told, and where the power of storytelling can change the world." The Rebalance project had set the wheels of change in motion, but the true test would be whether Musk's vision could endure in a world that was increasingly skeptical of his motives. Was he really creating a platform for the people, or was this just another step in his quest for control? Only time would tell. The digital world was abuzz. The Rebalance project had sparked a wave of transformation, but with transformation came inevitable friction. While some celebrated the new focus on authenticity, others felt stifled. Could Musk's platform really live up to its promise, or was it merely a facade for something more complex? As the platform evolved, so did its challenges, none more pressing than how to maintain the balance between innovation and integrity. The change had been swift and powerful, but it wasn't without its challenges. What began as a well-meaning initiative to prioritize deeper, more authentic content had evolved into something far more complicated. Musk's platform had taken on the shape of a digital utopia for some, but for others, it had become a battleground for freedom of expression versus algorithmic control. It wasn't long before the cracks in Musk's utopia began to show. Users who had once thrived under the old algorithm, content creators who specialized in sensationalism, clickbait, and attention-grabbing visuals, began to feel left out of the new system. They felt as if the platform had abandoned the very essence of what made it popular in the first place: entertainment. "I came here because I wanted to make a name for myself, not sit around writing essays," said one frustrated creator in a viral post. "You can't expect everyone to be a philosopher or artist. I was here to entertain people, not make them feel bad about themselves." There's a place for both, but the new system? It's not giving us the opportunity. On the other side, the new wave of creators, writers, artists, and thought leaders, felt empowered. They embraced the shift toward quality over quantity, seeing it as an opportunity to reclaim the platform from what they considered the chaos of viral nonsense. For them, the algorithm's shift felt like a victory. One of these voices was Lin, a poet from Vietnam whose work focused on the personal struggles of growing up in a post-war world. Lin's stories were deeply personal, tackling themes of loss, love, and survival with profound beauty. Under the old system, her work had been lost in a sea of trending topics and viral memes. But with the Rebalance project, her words found a global audience. "People are really listening now," Lin shared during a live Q&A. "This platform has given me the chance to share stories that matter. It's not about getting millions of followers, it's about speaking to the hearts of those who care." But the divide between these two groups, the old guard of sensationalism and the new wave of authentic storytellers, was beginning to grow. Musk knew that the system wasn't perfect. As much as the Rebalance project had succeeded in promoting authenticity, it had also inadvertently alienated a significant portion of the user base. The tension was palpable, and Musk, ever the visionary, decided that the platform needed to evolve once again. This time, the goal wasn't just to promote authenticity, but to create an environment where different forms of expression could coexist. Musk and his team began brainstorming ways to balance the needs of creators from all walks of life. They wanted a system that didn't punish flashy content creators for their style, while still promoting thought-provoking and authentic works. The solution, Musk believed, lay in a dual algorithm approach. One algorithm would prioritize meaningful engagement and authenticity, while another would give space for entertainment-driven content to thrive. This new algorithm would allow for both forms of content to flourish, based on what the user chose to prioritize. Those who wanted deep, reflective stories could choose an algorithm that filtered out the fluff. Those who sought entertainment, humor, and high-energy content could engage with an algorithm designed to amplify that type of content. "We don't have to choose between art and entertainment," Musk explained in a public post. "Both have value, both have their place. It's time we create a space where users can decide for themselves what they want to engage with." Not everyone was convinced, however. The very users who had championed the Rebalance project now found themselves questioning whether Musk had gone too far. Critics worried that the dual algorithm approach might lead to further fragmentation, creating a platform where like-minded people only interacted with each other, reinforcing their own beliefs, rather than opening up to diverse ideas. "What happened to the idea of unity?" one vocal critic posted. "We were supposed to come together to create a more inclusive space, not divide ourselves into silos. This is just another form of segregation." Musk was faced with his toughest challenge yet: how to navigate the growing complexity of his platform's ecosystem. The promise of the Rebalance project, fostering a space where authenticity could thrive, had drawn in many, but it had also pushed others away. Was it possible to please everyone? And even if he could, would it mean the platform lost its soul? As the dual algorithm system began to roll out, it was clear that the platform was being tested like never before. Musk had brought people together through shared ideas, but now, his platform was a mirror of society, a fractured digital landscape with competing visions of what the platform should be. For some, the changes felt liberating. They were no longer confined to the echo chambers of viral trends. Content that was thoughtful, emotional, and challenging could finally stand on its own. But for others, it felt like a betrayal. A platform that had once promised to be free and open had become a place where only certain kinds of voices were allowed to be heard. One of the most vocal critics of the new system was Kyle, a popular content creator known for his satirical videos. Kyle had built his brand on humor and quick-witted observations about current events. Under the new algorithm, his videos, while still humorous, were buried beneath more serious, in-depth content. His followers began to question whether the platform still valued entertainment at all. "You know, I always thought this was about bringing people together," Kyle said in a video response. "But now it's like they're telling us only serious content matters. What happened to the funny, the light-hearted? The stuff that makes you laugh?" But as Musk watched the conversations unfold, he remained focused on his larger vision. The platform had grown, yes, but so had its challenges. There was no turning back now. The platform was evolving, and so were the conversations it sparked. In a private meeting with his team, Musk reflected on the road ahead. The Rebalance project had already begun to change the way people engaged with the platform. Yet the path forward wasn't clear. Could Musk navigate the ever-growing complexities of a digital world that was more fractured than ever? Could he keep the platform true to its mission of fostering meaningful connections, while allowing diverse forms of expression to coexist? "We're in the middle of something huge," Musk said. "This isn't just about tech, it's about the future of society. We're rewriting the rules of communication, and it's not going to be easy. But I believe we can get it right." And as the platform continued to evolve, it became clear that Musk's vision was far from over. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was certain: Musk wasn't backing down. The battle for the soul of the platform was just beginning. As the platform began to shift toward this dual algorithm approach, it quickly became clear that the road to unity was far bumpier than Musk had anticipated. The backlash intensified, not just from the usual critics, but from a significant portion of users who had once supported the Rebalance project. Musk had attempted to create a platform where all types of voices could coexist, but in doing so, he had awakened an even more divisive force. Musk had always been accustomed to critics. After all, he had been criticized for everything from the design of his cars to the viability of his rocket missions. But this felt different. This wasn't about skepticism over technology or the future of space exploration, this was about people's identities, their very understanding of what the platform was supposed to represent. The new dual algorithm system was designed to allow creators to engage with content tailored to their preferences, whether they valued deep, thoughtful storytelling or short, viral entertainment. But as the system rolled out, it quickly became evident that it had deepened the ideological and stylistic divide between creators. The core issue was one of visibility. Content that was deep, reflective, and thought-provoking now flourished under the new algorithm, but many creators, particularly those who thrived on humor, satire, and sensationalism, felt their work was being marginalized. Some said the platform was no longer about expression, but about conforming to an algorithmic ideal of what authentic content should look like. For the first time, Musk was hearing something he hadn't expected: concerns about freedom of expression. Kyle, the satirical content creator, had become the loudest voice in this growing backlash. His fans rallied behind him, creating hashtags like #SaveTheLaughs and #NotEveryOneIsDeep. They argued that the platform was now too serious, and that the push toward authenticity was suffocating the light-hearted content that had once made it so appealing. "It's like we've been thrown into a box labeled less important, because we didn't want to write an essay on our opinions," Kyle said in one of his viral videos. "Sure, thoughtful content is great, but do we have to erase everything else to make room for it?" Musk, of course, responded directly to the criticism, saying that the purpose of the dual algorithm system was to provide a balanced environment for all kinds of creators. But as the backlash grew, it became harder to defend the system's implementation. Some users argued that the platform had gone from being a place of free expression to one that seemed to dictate what was and wasn't valuable. Others pushed back on the idea that authenticity could be algorithmically defined. They argued that the new approach was reinforcing a narrow, elitist view of what was worth listening to. They didn't want to be told what was authentic, they just wanted the freedom to be themselves. As the dissatisfaction spread, a new movement began to form, one that was based not on a single creator or group, but on a collective belief in freedom of expression. This movement called for the removal of algorithmic constraints entirely. They believed that the platform's changes were going too far, and that the very nature of the platform, its ability to amplify any voice, regardless of the message, was being undermined. This was no longer a simple debate about algorithms, it had become a political issue. People felt like their voices were being silenced by a system that prioritized certain types of content over others. They argued that by trying to force users into specific molds, Musk was stifling creativity and reducing the richness of the platform. One of the most vocal advocates of this movement was Naomi, a popular streamer who had built her career on spontaneous, unscripted commentary. Naomi's content was not particularly deep, but it was honest and full of personality. Under the new algorithm, however, her videos, which had once been widely shared and loved, were now getting far less exposure. In an emotional video, Naomi opened up about how the changes had impacted her. "When I started, I was just a girl with a camera and an opinion," Naomi said. "And that's all it was, me. Now I feel like I have to fit into a box. A box that isn't me. And that's what I'm fighting against, being told what kind of content is worth sharing. We shouldn't have to change who we are just to stay relevant." The video went viral. Naomi's audience rallied around her, and the hashtag #FreedomToBeMe began trending on the platform. It was clear that a large portion of users felt that the very essence of the platform had been compromised. They wanted a return to the days when they could be themselves without worrying about an algorithm dictating what was worth their time. The backlash reached a fever pitch. Musk was now faced with a growing revolt that could potentially undo everything he had worked for. What had begun as a simple mission to rebalance the platform had turned into a full-scale crisis. With user trust eroding by the day, Musk knew he had to act quickly. "I've always believed in the power of free speech," Musk said in a public post. "This platform isn't about controlling content. It's about giving people a place to express themselves, no matter their background, style, or opinions. And while I believe we need to focus on authenticity, I understand that we've taken things too far." In a bold move, Musk proposed a radical solution: the introduction of a new feature called expression zones. This feature would allow users to opt into various zones based on the type of content they wanted to experience. Each zone would have its own algorithm, tailored to different forms of content, whether it was deep, reflective stories, or spontaneous, humorous videos. But the most striking feature was that users could toggle between zones freely. They wouldn't be confined to one mode of interaction. If they wanted to switch from watching thoughtful, educational content to something more light-hearted and fun, they could do so at will, without fear of being locked into a single type of content. "I want users to have control again," Musk said. "This is about choice. It's about freedom to curate your own experience. I think we've tried to dictate too much, and now it's time to let users decide." Musk's proposal was a game-changer. For many, it was a breath of fresh air, a chance to reclaim the platform and shape it to their needs. Others, however, remained skeptical. They wondered whether the new system would truly address the underlying issue of authenticity versus entertainment. Could the new zones offer real diversity, or would they simply divide the platform even further? As users awaited the rollout of the expression zones, Musk knew that this was a critical juncture. The platform's future was uncertain, and the challenge ahead was monumental. The question on everyone's mind: would this new feature actually heal the divisions, or would it be just another temporary fix that failed to address the root of the problem? Musk understood one thing above all else: change was inevitable, but so was the unpredictability of human nature. And in this ever-evolving digital world, the only thing he could count on was that the battle for the soul of the platform was far from over. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As Musk unveiled the expression zones, he hoped that his latest innovation would be the solution to the platform's growing ideological divide. But as the feature began to roll out to users, it quickly became clear that things were far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. The new zones promised choice, but the unintended consequences would soon shake the very foundation of the platform. The initial excitement surrounding the expression zones was palpable. Users were eager to test out the new feature, to explore the different content zones, and to regain control over their experience. For Musk, this was the moment of redemption, the chance to prove that his vision was still alive, that the platform could evolve without losing its soul. At first, everything seemed perfect. Creators could experiment with their content across different zones, and users felt empowered. They no longer had to endure a flood of content they didn't care about, and creators could carve out niche communities for their work. It felt like a return to the golden days when content diversity was celebrated. Lin, the Vietnamese poet who had once felt sidelined under the old algorithm, was thrilled with the new system. The Thoughtful Stories zone allowed her to share her deeply personal work with like-minded individuals who were eager to engage in meaningful conversations. She found her audience more engaged than ever before, and her work was resonating across the globe. "I'm not just sharing my words," Lin said in a video, "I'm connecting with people who understand. This is what I've always wanted, community, not just numbers." For creators like Lin, the expression zone seemed like a triumph. It offered a tailored experience that nurtured both creativity and deep engagement. But as the days passed, darker patterns began to emerge. While many creators flourished under the new zones, others felt the impact of the system's unintended consequences. The most glaring issue was the increasing segregation of content. Instead of providing a broader, more diverse platform, the expression zones began to amplify the divide between different types of creators. As creators found themselves in their respective zones, content became increasingly insular. The entertainment zone was filled with fast-paced, viral videos and clickbait content. The Thoughtful Stories zone was home to long-form, introspective pieces that attracted a niche audience. But as users began to immerse themselves more deeply in one zone, they stopped interacting with the content in other zones. Naomi, the popular streamer who had previously spoken out against the new algorithm, saw her followers fragment. Once able to captivate a broad audience with her unscripted, off-the-cuff commentary, Naomi found herself boxed into a content category where her spontaneous style felt out of place. "I never signed up to be just funny or entertainment," Naomi said in a frustrated post. "I'm more than that. But now, I'm being pigeonholed into this narrow space that doesn't fit who I am. It's like my audience can't see the whole picture anymore. I don't even know who I'm talking to anymore." While Naomi's frustration resonated with many, the divide was even more evident in the overall user experience. People who had once enjoyed discovering new content were now only exposed to content they already agreed with. Thoughtful readers were now only engaging with thought-provoking, emotionally driven content, while those seeking entertainment were trapped in a bubble of viral memes and comedy sketches. The term echo chambers had been used for years in the context of social media, but it was now becoming a pressing reality on Musk's platform. As users gravitated toward their designated zones, the platform became a collection of smaller, isolated communities, each with their own set of values, interests, and biases. For the first time, the platform's diverse community was facing a lack of cross-pollination, the very thing that had made the platform unique. Where once the boundary between deep discussions and viral content was porous, the expression zones had now created literal walls. "Do we really want to live in a world where we're only seeing content from people who think like us?" said a user in a post that quickly went viral across the platform. "We're becoming more polarized. I don't even know how to break out of my zone anymore." The issue was now at the forefront of every conversation. People who had once reveled in the platform's diversity were feeling stifled. And even creators who had initially championed the expression zones were beginning to question whether the system was truly serving its purpose. As the conversation around expression zones continued to evolve, the future of the platform hung in the balance. Musk had always prided himself on his ability to innovate and solve problems, but this felt different. The backlash wasn't just about algorithms, it was about the essence of the platform itself, the principles it was built on. Was Musk willing to let go of control entirely, allowing users to shape the platform however they saw fit? Or would he continue to tweak and refine the system, creating a controlled environment that promised to deliver a perfect user experience? Only time would tell, but one thing was clear, the battle for the soul of the platform was far from over. Musk's attempt to fine-tune the expression zones was met with mixed reactions. While some users welcomed the tweaks, others saw them as an admission that the original plan had failed. The platform, once the wild frontier of digital expression, was now caught in the whirlwind of its own internal contradictions. The changes to the expression zones were rolled out cautiously. The algorithm's ability to nudge users into exploring content outside their established zones was implemented as a soft suggestion, allowing people to opt into discovery without disrupting their routines. It was Musk's way of addressing the growing fragmentation that had taken hold of the platform, and he hoped it would restore balance. But instead of soothing the concerns of frustrated users, the adjustments had an unsettling effect. The platform felt more like a digital experiment than ever before. Lynn, who had initially thrived under the new system, found herself facing a new dilemma. While she had enjoyed the freedom of her thoughtful stories zone, the adjustments made by Musk had introduced an odd sense of unpredictability. Some of her followers began to complain that the content they were seeing was inconsistent, sometimes thoughtful, sometimes entirely out of place. "I don't know what's going on anymore," Lynn posted on her feed. "I used to be able to connect with my audience in a way that felt genuine. Now, I'm constantly being nudged into content that feels disconnected from who I am." This was the unintended consequence of Musk's changes. The new nudging system didn't just force users to engage with content they might not have been interested in, it caused confusion. Content creators found themselves caught between the desire to create what they loved and the need to appease an algorithm that seemed to be trying to shape their output. Naomi, too, felt the sting. Once celebrated for her unfiltered content, she now found her videos being placed in front of audiences who didn't quite understand her style. Her fans, who had enjoyed her raw, off-the-cuff commentary, were now flooded with notifications for more polished, algorithm-approved videos. It felt like the platform was trying to erase what had made her unique. Musk had never been one to shy away from controversy, but the backlash against the expression zones was unlike anything he had ever encountered. This wasn't just a group of disgruntled creators, this was a large portion of the platform's user base, from casual users to influential content creators, who were now voicing their dissatisfaction. But Musk, ever the optimist, didn't view this as the end of his vision. He saw the issues as an opportunity to refine the system further. The problem, as he saw it, wasn't the idea itself, it was the implementation. The zones had worked in some ways, but in others, they had exacerbated the very issues they were designed to solve. In a live-streamed conversation with his team, Musk laid out his vision for the future. "People want diversity," he said. "They don't want to be stuck in their own little bubble. We need to fix this." Musk proposed several changes to the expression zones to allow for greater cross-pollination between the different types of content. The idea was to allow users to break out of their bubbles, but still maintain the personalized, targeted experience that the zones had promised. A new algorithm would be introduced to encourage users to explore content outside of their usual preferences, by highlighting posts from other zones that might be relevant to them. "I believe in choice," Musk said during the stream. "But I also believe in discovery. People should have the freedom to see what they want, but they should also be nudged to experience the unexpected. That's how growth happens." Musk's proposed solution sounded promising, but it raised deeper questions about control. The idea of nudging users toward content outside their zone seemed to contradict the core principle of giving users complete control over their experience. Could the platform really maintain the delicate balance between personalization and the free flow of ideas? Or was it simply another way to engineer user behavior, no different than the algorithms they had originally rebelled against? Critics argued that Musk's solution would only further exacerbate the issue by making the platform feel even more like a series of controlled experiments. They feared that while Musk's ideas might seem progressive, they were still inherently about managing the chaos, shaping the user experience in ways that might unintentionally stifle the very thing that made the platform successful in the first place. The question remained, was the platform a place for true freedom, or was it simply another version of a digital empire, carefully curated to ensure the right balance of content? "I used to be able to make a video and have people engage with me because it was real. Now I feel like I'm just another cog in the machine," Naomi said in a video, her frustration evident. "We're being sold this idea of freedom, but the truth is, it's the algorithm that's really in charge." What started as small murmurs of discontent quickly snowballed into a full-scale rebellion. Users who had been on the fence about the changes began to speak out. The hashtag #BringBackFreedom started trending, as creators and casual users alike rallied against the increasing control of the platform's algorithms. Even those who had initially supported Musk's vision began to question whether the price of freedom was too high. The platform had become a place where content was no longer an organic expression of creativity but rather a carefully curated experience, one that had to fit within the parameters of the algorithm to succeed. "I thought we were going to change things, but instead, we've built a new cage," said Kyle in a viral video. "This isn't freedom. This is just the same thing we had before, but with a few more bells and whistles. We're still slaves to the algorithm." As the backlash gained momentum, Musk faced a crucial crossroads. For the first time, he wasn't just dealing with criticism from outside the platform, he was up against an internal uprising. The very users who had fueled the platform's success were now questioning the vision they had once supported. In response to the growing unrest, Musk made an unprecedented move. He addressed the issue directly in a live-streamed event. "The platform has evolved," Musk began, his tone uncharacteristically somber. "We've made mistakes, and I want to own that. The expression zones were meant to empower, but instead, they've caused frustration and confusion. We set out to create something that could bring people together, but in the process, we've inadvertently pulled them apart." It was a rare moment of humility for Musk, who had always been confident in his ability to lead the platform. The acknowledgement of failure, however small, sent ripples through the digital landscape. Musk's transparency was a refreshing change for many, and it hinted at a shift in his approach to leadership. "I'm not here to give you false promises or more fancy algorithms," Musk continued. "I'm here to listen. And I want to hear from you, the users, about what's working and what's not." For the first time, Musk's message wasn't about innovation or the future of digital content. It was about taking a step back, reassessing, and learning from mistakes. This was the moment of reckoning, the moment when Musk, once the visionary leader with all the answers, was forced to admit that he didn't have everything figured out. As Musk continued to field questions from users and content creators, the conversation took on a new tone. No longer was the focus on what was better for the platform in a technical sense. The discussion had shifted toward what kind of space the platform should be. "I just want a space where I can connect with people, no matter who they are," one user commented during the stream. "I want to share what I love and have someone, anyone, see it for what it is. Not because the algorithm told them to, but because it resonated with them." Musk's expression softened as he read through the comments. This wasn't just a technical issue, it was an emotional one. Users weren't looking for more algorithms to optimize their experience. They were looking for authenticity, for genuine connections. Musk realized that he had become so focused on the technology of the platform that he had lost sight of the platform's original purpose, to connect people, not just content. He paused for a moment, deep in thought. "We've been talking about algorithms and zones and systems," Musk said finally. "But what if we focused more on the people? What if the platform's true power comes from letting creators just be?" This shift in thinking represented a dramatic departure from the data-driven approach that had dominated Musk's tenure as CEO. For the first time, he was suggesting that the platform might need to change its entire philosophy: no more optimizing for engagement, no more trying to force people into boxes. The focus should be on human connection, and the platform should become a place for people to share, explore, and create without feeling constrained by algorithms. It was an epiphany that left many watching in stunned silence. Could it be that Musk was finally ready to abandon the very principles he had built his platform on in favor of something more intuitive, more personal? Musk's admission of failure and shift in focus sent waves through the platform. Users were both hopeful and skeptical. Was this a genuine transformation, or just another temporary fix to patch up a broken system? The jury was still out. But one thing was clear: Musk had realized that the platform couldn't continue down the path it had been on. The users had spoken, and the reckoning had arrived. Now, the future of the platform lay in the hands of its users, and Musk himself would have to decide if he was willing to take a back seat to the community he had created. Musk's sudden shift in approach stirred the digital world. The platform was now at a crossroads. Could it truly return to its roots, or had it already evolved beyond recognition? As the user revolt continued to grow, Musk knew that this was a defining moment. He needed to act decisively, but he also needed to let the community in on this transformation. Musk's apology had been genuine, but it wasn't enough. His words alone couldn't restore the faith that had been lost in the platform. Users wanted action, not just promises. And Musk knew this better than anyone. The platform's engineers and designers were already hard at work behind the scenes. But this time, Musk wasn't the one calling all the shots. Instead, he invited the community to contribute to the discussion. A bold new idea began to take shape. What if users could directly influence the direction of the platform? What if they had a hand in deciding the rules that governed their own experience? Musk was already known for his ambitious, sometimes outlandish ideas, but this one was different. He proposed a community-driven model where users could vote on certain features, set boundaries for content moderation, and suggest improvements for the platform. It wasn't just about giving users a voice, it was about creating a system where the community could shape its own future. The idea was met with a wave of optimism. For the first time in months, the platform felt like it was heading back toward the direction of freedom, the freedom to choose what users wanted to see, what they wanted to create, and how they wanted to interact with each other. Musk outlined a plan. Every month, a selection of proposed changes or updates would be put to a vote, allowing users to decide whether or not they wanted them implemented. Whether it was a new feature, a modification to existing tools, or even changes in how content was curated, the power would rest in the hands of the community. In a historic live stream, Musk laid out the first community vote. "This is your platform," he said. "I've always said that the success of this platform depends on the people who use it. So, let's put it to the test. For the next 48 hours, you get to decide on the future of this platform." The first vote was simple: should the expression zones be kept as they were, or should they be entirely reworked to allow for more cross-pollination between content categories? The overwhelming response was a demand for more flexibility, a system that allowed creators to jump between zones while still maintaining control over the experience they offered. The vote was historic, with over 100 million users participating. The results came in quickly, and it was clear, the community wanted change. But what change? What would the future of the platform look like in the hands of its users? While Musk and his team were pleased with the results of the vote, the shift in power was not without its consequences. There were those who feared that giving users more control over the platform would only lead to chaos, an unmoderated space where misinformation and harmful content could spread unchecked. In the wake of the vote, many of the platform's original content moderators were uneasy. They had long been the gatekeepers of the community, ensuring that posts adhered to the platform's guidelines. But now, they faced a new reality where their authority was being questioned. With users gaining the ability to vote on content decisions, would the platform become a free-for-all? "We're letting the users take control, but are we ready for what that might mean?" one moderator asked during an internal meeting. "Do we really want to open up Pandora's box?" Despite these concerns, Musk was adamant that this was the future. The community was the platform, and if users wanted to take responsibility for the direction it went, so be it. But it was clear that the platform would need new rules, rules that the community itself would help shape. As the new community-driven model began to take effect, there was an undeniable sense of chaos. The first few weeks were filled with fervent debates about content guidelines, moderation, and the future of the platform. Users were creating content at an unprecedented rate, experimenting with formats and topics that had once been censored or hidden by the algorithm. Naomi found herself back in her element. Freed from the constraints of the expression zones, she began to engage with new audiences, all while remaining true to her raw, unscripted style. Her fans were ecstatic to see the old Naomi return. The feedback was overwhelming, and for the first time in months, she felt the joy of creating without having to worry about an algorithm telling her what was best. For Lynn, the return to a more open platform was bittersweet. While she appreciated the newfound freedom, she also understood the growing risks. The community-driven approach meant that users with louder voices were now able to dominate the conversation, pushing out more nuanced or less popular content. "I love that people can connect more freely," Lynn said in a post, "but I also worry about what happens when the loudest voices drown out the smaller ones." The platform was beginning to resemble a digital Wild West, full of untamed possibilities, but also rife with challenges. Without a clear set of guidelines, the line between freedom of expression and chaos was growing thinner by the day. And then came the unforeseen consequence, the rise of content farming. With fewer restrictions in place, some users saw an opportunity to exploit the new voting system for their benefit. Entire networks of coordinated accounts began to emerge, pushing for viral trends and viral content that was designed solely for engagement, content that did not necessarily offer value or meaning but was crafted to maximize clicks and shares. The platform, once a space for organic creativity, was now at risk of devolving into a content farm, where quantity trumped quality. Musk was faced with a new dilemma: how could he maintain the freedom the community had demanded while ensuring the platform didn't spiral into an environment where nothing mattered except engagement metrics? Could this system, which had promised the restoration of true user control, become another tool of manipulation? It was a question that Musk couldn't answer yet, but it was clear, the next step in the platform's evolution would be crucial. The community-driven approach had opened doors, but it had also unleashed unforeseen challenges. As Musk looked at the data coming in, he realized that the platform was still in flux. The experiment had worked, but only to a point. The community had tasted the freedom of shaping their own experience, but they were now faced with the responsibility that came with it. Would they be able to maintain this newfound balance? Or would the platform be forever trapped in a cycle of growth, change, and regression? There was no clear answer. But Musk knew one thing for certain: the world was watching. And the platform's future, its very soul, would depend on how it navigated the turbulent waters ahead. As Musk grappled with the growing pains of his community-driven experiment, one thing became clear: the digital world was not a predictable place. The very freedom he had championed was now coming into direct conflict with the platform's original mission to foster meaningful connections. The early days of the new system had been chaotic but exciting. Users were flooded with new ideas, content was flowing freely, and a renewed sense of optimism had pervaded the platform. But as the weeks wore on, Musk began to notice something troubling. The platform was beginning to feel like a battleground, with competing interests, ideologies, and content formats clashing in ways that were unpredictable, and at times, overwhelming. Musk knew that he had to act quickly to steer the platform back on course. The sense of community that had driven the initial success of the vote-driven approach was beginning to unravel. The more users demanded freedom, the more they also created chaos. In the absence of a clear structure, a new type of influencer began to emerge. No longer just individuals sharing creative ideas, some content creators were now dominating the platform. These creators had figured out how to game the voting system, manipulating trends and feeding into viral content cycles. Some of them weren't even interested in creating genuine, meaningful content. Instead, they were focused on one thing: engagement. They posted content designed to provoke reactions, outrage, humor, or shock, anything that would keep their followers clicking, commenting, and sharing. Naomi was one of the first to feel the full impact of this new breed of creators. As her content grew in popularity, she found herself facing an influx of videos that were intentionally divisive, provocative, inflammatory, and sometimes outright misleading. They weren't stories, they were just headlines designed to elicit reactions. What happened to the real creators? Naomi asked aloud during one of her live streams. I feel like the algorithm is pushing this fake, clickbait garbage. It's all about who can shout the loudest, not who has something important to say. She had built her reputation on authenticity, but now, her content was drowned out by a flood of viral videos with sensational titles and overstated claims. It was becoming harder to stand out in the digital noise. The phenomenon Naomi described was not isolated. Content farming had taken root across the platform, especially after Musk's decision to allow users more autonomy. The idea of engagement at all costs had seeped into the system, causing more users to follow the pattern of producing quick, viral content without much regard for quality. Content farms were now pervasive. There were accounts created solely for the purpose of mass-producing videos, photos, and posts that would appeal to the platform's algorithm. These creators often used bots or hired teams to churn out content at a rapid pace. They weren't interested in creating anything meaningful, they just wanted the maximum number of clicks, likes, and shares. Lynn, who had always focused on deep, thought-provoking content, was now also facing a challenge. Her thoughtful stories were buried beneath the endless stream of viral content. "I worked so hard to create something meaningful, but now I can barely get noticed," she posted on her feed. "It's exhausting." The platform had become a battlefield between genuine creators and the viral machines. With every new trend that rose to prominence, the larger questions about authenticity and quality began to feel like distant memories. Musk, while still deeply committed to the idea of community-driven growth, now found himself in a difficult position. The very freedom that had been celebrated was now leading to a polarized and fractured platform. He had underestimated the extent to which some users would push the boundaries for personal gain. After weeks of monitoring the fallout, Musk called an emergency meeting with his core team. The data was clear, the platform was losing its sense of purpose. Engagement was through the roof, but the type of content being shared was increasingly superficial and inflammatory. "We've created a monster," one of Musk's engineers said. "The system you built gave users too much freedom without structure. Now, we've got fake influencers everywhere, and real creators can't even get a foot in the door." Musk rubbed his forehead, deep in thought. It had always been his belief that users were smarter than the algorithms, that they would ultimately choose quality over quantity. But he hadn't accounted for the rise of manipulation. Now, users were exploiting the very freedom he had given them, and the platform was losing its soul. "It's not just about engagement anymore," Musk said quietly. "It's about connection. We lost that somewhere along the way. I think we need to make a shift, and I think it has to happen now." Musk's decision was a tough one, but it was clear, the community-driven model needed rethinking. The platform had been built on the idea of providing freedom of expression, but what had that freedom turned into? A space filled with divisive content, noise, and shallow engagement. Musk proposed a radical solution. What if the platform went back to its roots, focusing on content that was meaningful, relevant, and truly connected to people's lives? He envisioned a platform where creators could still share what they loved, but in a way that aligned with the platform's purpose, to connect and engage authentically. However, this wouldn't be a return to the old model of tightly controlled content. Instead, Musk envisioned a hybrid system, one that would combine user autonomy with curated experiences designed to prioritize quality over viral engagement. "We'll keep the power in the hands of the users," Musk said during a live-streamed announcement, "but we'll add a layer of moderation to ensure that the content shared is genuinely valuable. We'll focus on authentic connections, and if the platform starts to reward content for the sake of clicks, then we'll rein it in." Musk's plan was a compromise, one that would attempt to strike a balance between community-driven growth and meaningful content. He didn't want to abandon the idea of user control, but he couldn't ignore the damage caused by the unchecked chaos. The changes were not going to be easy. In fact, they might be more difficult than any previous phase of the platform's growth. There would be pushback. Users who had enjoyed the pure freedom of the voting system would likely resist the shift. But Musk was resolute. "We can't let this platform become a battleground," he said in his closing statement. "It's time to rebuild with purpose. Freedom has to come with responsibility. We're going to bring that back." The road ahead would be a challenging one. But Musk knew that, like any great venture, the platform's success would depend on its ability to evolve, adapt, and find balance between freedom and integrity. Musk's decision to shift the platform's focus from chaotic freedom to a more structured system was met with both excitement and fierce opposition. The road to rebuilding would be anything but smooth. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. The users who had celebrated the freedom of the voting system were not pleased. They had tasted the autonomy that came with being able to shape the platform's future, and now Musk was asking them to surrender some of that control. For many, it felt like a betrayal, a return to the corporate model they had fought so hard to escape. "Why are you taking away our power?" one user tweeted. "We voted for a platform free from censorship. You promised us change, and now you're just another tech CEO with an agenda. What happened to freedom?" The criticisms flooded in, and they weren't just from individual users. Influencers, many of whom had built massive followings under the new system, rallied against Musk's decision. They argued that the changes were an attempt to rein in creativity and would only lead to the same type of algorithmic control that had stifled growth in the first place. Naomi, who had been among the loudest voices calling for the restoration of authenticity, found herself torn. While she understood the necessity of the new direction, she couldn't help but sympathize with the creators who felt silenced by the changes. Her follower count had skyrocketed after the initial freedom experiment, and now, the changes seemed like they could limit her reach. "This isn't what we signed up for," Naomi said in one of her live videos. "But at the same time, I get why Musk had to do it. The platform was becoming something else, something I didn't want to be a part of." For Lynn, the shift was a mixed bag. She had always believed that quality content should rise above viral trends, but she feared the new system would favor larger, more established creators. The algorithmic changes that Musk proposed would likely push the more experimental and niche creators, like her, further into obscurity. "I get it," Lynn posted. "I understand why the changes are necessary. But is this really going to help the smaller creators? Or will it just become a platform for the bigger influencers to dominate?" As users debated, the platform itself seemed to be at a standstill. The new voting system had not yet fully taken effect, and the uncertainty of the future left creators, users, and even advertisers questioning what would come next. Faced with a wave of discontent, Musk's team quickly pivoted. They realized that the community was not ready for such drastic changes all at once. While they still believed in the overall goal of balancing freedom with quality, they would need to find a way to ease the transition. "We need to give the users a chance to adjust," Musk admitted in an internal meeting. "If we push too hard, too fast, we risk losing everything we've built. Let's scale back, listen to the community, and find a way to implement these changes gradually." The decision was made to slow down the rollout of the new moderation systems, allowing for a trial period where users could vote on specific features before they were fully implemented. Musk's team also began to engage more directly with creators, holding town halls and open forums to explain the new direction and address concerns. One of the key components of the new system was user-controlled content moderation. Under Musk's proposal, users would be able to flag and vote on problematic content, allowing the community to manage the flow of information without the heavy hand of corporate intervention. The goal was to empower users to police their own space, fostering a sense of collective responsibility. Musk knew that this approach could help bridge the gap between user freedom and quality content. By putting moderation in the hands of the users, the platform would allow its community to determine the types of content that were acceptable. However, this would only work if users truly embraced their new role as responsible curators of the space. The platform's engineers were working overtime to implement the feature, and it was rolled out in beta form to a select group of users for testing. The early results were promising. Users were enthusiastic about the idea of taking ownership of the platform's content, and many felt a renewed sense of responsibility toward their fellow users. However, not everyone was thrilled with the new system. Some users felt that it was just another way for big influencers and content farms to maintain control, effectively shutting out independent voices. "This isn't community-driven," one commenter wrote. "It's just another way for the platform to let the loudest voices win." Musk knew that this was a valid concern, and he was determined to address it. He promised that the final system would ensure equal visibility for smaller creators, even as the platform moved toward a more structured approach to content moderation. The challenge was clear: how could the platform balance the needs of larger creators with those of smaller, more niche voices? In the midst of all the unrest, a small but passionate movement began to form. Users who had been disillusioned by the chaos of the platform's early days were now rallying around the idea of rebuilding with purpose. They believed that Musk's vision, a balance between freedom and responsibility, could actually lead to a better, more sustainable platform. These users organized campaigns to support the new moderation system, arguing that the freedom to create and share content had to be tempered by the responsibility to ensure that content was meaningful, positive, and respectful. Slowly, a wave of support began to swell, and the platform started to shift back toward its roots. Naomi was among the first to notice the change. "I see it," she said during a live stream. "The platform is starting to feel like a place where we can actually talk again, not just shout at each other. I know it's not perfect, but it's better than it was before." For Lynn, this was a sign that the platform's community could still be a place for thoughtful, meaningful conversation. She saw the new moderation tools as an opportunity to reach more people without compromising her integrity as a creator. "I think we can make this work," Lynn said in her latest post. "It's going to take time, but if we all pitch in and make this our space, we can bring it back to what it was meant to be." Despite the tensions, Musk remained committed to his vision of a platform that balanced freedom with responsibility. He knew that this wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that the only way to succeed in the long run was to evolve. "Change is hard," Musk said during a live stream. "But we're not backing down. We have to evolve. The platform has to grow. And we're all in this together." As the dust began to settle, Musk's plan began to take shape. The platform was no longer a battleground for freedom, but a space where creators could find a balance between engagement and authenticity. It wasn't perfect, and it might never be, but the platform was beginning to evolve into something better. Musk's decision to implement user-controlled moderation was a controversial but necessary step. Yet, as he wrestled with the complexities of platform evolution, an unlikely alliance began to form, a group of creators who had once been at odds with each other but now shared a common goal. The early days of the user-driven system had splintered the platform. Some creators, like Naomi, felt their voices were drowned out by clickbait-driven content. Others, like Lynn, had struggled to maintain visibility in a sea of viral influencers. But after Musk's announcement of the new moderation system, they realized that they were in a similar position, both fighting for authenticity in a world that was increasingly governed by algorithmic trends and viral content. Naomi was the first to reach out to Lynn. She had been following Lynn's posts for a while, feeling a kinship with her ideas about meaningful content. "Lynn, we need to talk," Naomi messaged her one evening. "I think we both see the same problem with how things are going. Maybe it's time we work together." Lynn hesitated at first. She had always believed in creating content that was thoughtful and unique, but she had never been one to collaborate. Yet, after seeing the overwhelming wave of viral content that had taken over the platform, she agreed. "I'm listening," Lynn replied. "I think the platform's gotten out of hand. We need to remind people why we're here, to create, to connect, not just to get clicks." Naomi and Lynn's conversation was the spark that ignited a larger movement. Soon, they were joined by other creators who shared their frustrations and were determined to bring the platform back to its roots. This new collective of creators, who called themselves the Creators Coalition, was built on the belief that content could be both viral and meaningful. Each member of the coalition brought something unique to the table: Naomi's massive following, Lynn's thoughtful content, and a host of other influencers, artists, and activists who had grown disillusioned with the platform's shift toward mindless engagement. Together, they began crafting a manifesto that would outline their vision for a more authentic, user-focused platform. The manifesto called for 1. Transparency in moderation. Content moderation should be clear and accountable. Users needed to understand how decisions were being made about what content was allowed to thrive on the platform. 2. support for niche creators. The platform should prioritize giving a voice to smaller creators, not just the viral content creators. Algorithms should reward substance over sensationalism. 3. Sustainability and engagement. Metrics like likes and shares were fine, but they shouldn't be the sole drivers of content. Engagement needed to be based on the quality and relevance of the content. 4. Collaborative community building. The platform should support and encourage collaboration rather than competition. Creators could elevate each other instead of being pitted against each other. Naomi and Lin quickly became the faces of the coalition. They used their large platforms to share the manifesto, creating videos and live streams explaining their position. Their message resonated with a large portion of the platform's user base, especially those tired of seeing content reduced to a numbers game. "This is not just about us," Naomi said in one of her videos. "It's about all of us, everyone who feels like their voice is being drowned out by the noise. We're standing up for creators who want to make something that matters." Lin added, "We're not asking for less freedom, we're asking for better freedom. A freedom where quality can thrive, where creators don't have to sacrifice authenticity for virality." As the Creators Coalition gained momentum, Musk took notice. The group's message was catching fire, and users from all walks of life were rallying behind the idea of a platform that prioritized meaningful engagement over the sensational. At first, Musk was skeptical. He knew that such a movement could either enhance the platform's mission or tear it apart. But after seeing the overwhelming support the coalition had garnered, he decided to meet with Naomi and Lin in person. The meeting took place at one of Musk's Tesla offices, far from the public eye. Musk had heard from his engineers about the group's growing influence, and he understood that this could be a pivotal moment for the platform. "You're all advocating for something that's very different from the way things have been," Musk said as he greeted Naomi and Lin. "But if I'm being honest, I respect what you're trying to do. I've always believed that real change starts with people who are willing to challenge the status quo. You've done that." Naomi was taken aback by his candor. "We want to make this platform better. Not just for us, but for everyone. We believe in the idea of a space where creativity and community thrive, not just clicks." Musk leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "I agree. But I can't do this alone. We've already seen how difficult it is to strike a balance between freedom and responsibility. The path you're suggesting won't be easy, but I'm willing to take the risk, if we do this together." The meeting ended with a handshake, a symbolic moment that marked the beginning of a new partnership. Musk, who had once been seen as a disruptive force who couldn't be tamed, was now aligning himself with creators who had the same desire for a better platform. The Creators Coalition and Musk's team began working together on a set of revised policies for the platform. They wanted to address the issues that had plagued the system while preserving the spirit of community-driven content. The goal was to bring back trust, to make the platform a place where creators could feel safe and encouraged to experiment with new ideas, without being drowned out by viral content. One of the first initiatives was to implement a creator support program, aimed at helping smaller creators who had struggled to gain traction. The program would provide training, funding, and exposure for creators who focused on high-quality, impactful content. The second major initiative was the Creator Roundtable, where influential creators would meet regularly with Musk and his team to discuss what was working, what wasn't, and how to keep the platform evolving in a positive direction. This would ensure that the platform would never lose sight of the creators who had built it into what it was today. "Together, we can make this the best place for creators to thrive," Musk said in a video announcement, standing alongside Naomi, Lin, and other members of the Creators Coalition. "We're bringing back purpose, and it's going to be a platform where quality matters." The platform was far from perfect, and the road ahead was still filled with challenges. But the coalition was growing stronger, and the message was clear: change was coming. As Naomi and Lin looked ahead, they knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more obstacles to overcome, more voices to be heard, and more decisions to be made. But for the first time in a long while, they felt hopeful. "We have the chance to change the world," Naomi said with a smile. We're not just fighting for us anymore, we're fighting for everyone who wants to see a platform that values creativity over clicks. Lin nodded. And we're not giving up. Not now. Not ever. The road ahead was filled with hope, but also uncertainty. As the new initiatives began to take shape, Musk and the Creators Coalition faced their most significant challenge yet, implementing change without losing the trust they had worked so hard to rebuild. The shift toward a more thoughtful and user-driven platform was gaining traction, but opposition still simmered. Critics argued that Musk's collaboration with creators was nothing more than a PR stunt, designed to placate the masses without fundamentally changing the platform's structure. The larger influencers still had immense control, and many felt that the smaller voices were still at risk of being silenced by the algorithmic tide. Naomi and Lin, however, remained optimistic. They believed that the coalition's work wasn't just about balancing the system, it was about reimagining what the platform could be. They had made significant progress, but they knew that the real test would come when the changes were fully rolled out. Would the platform truly evolve into a place that valued creativity over sensationalism? Or would it succumb to the same pressures that had defined it before? The pivotal moment arrived during the platform's first annual State of the Platform address, where Musk would announce the full rollout of the new changes. The event was a spectacle, streamed live to millions of viewers, with Musk at the helm. Naomi, Lin, and members of the Creators Coalition stood alongside him as they prepared to unveil the new direction. For days leading up to the event, tension ran high. The platform had been in flux, with many users unsure of what to expect. Some were hopeful, believing that the changes would usher in a new era of creative freedom. Others, particularly the larger influencers, were apprehensive, fearing that they might lose their grip on the platform they had helped shape. As the event began, Musk took the stage, flanked by the coalition members. He opened with a bold statement. This platform is not just about numbers. It's about purpose. It's about giving creators the tools they need to shape the future without being shackled by viral trends or clickbait. We're here to build something better, a platform that is not just a place to get famous, but a place to make a difference. The crowd erupted in applause, but there was still a palpable sense of unease. The first major test was yet to come. How would the new system affect the influencers and creators who had dominated the platform in its previous iteration? Naomi, standing beside Musk, took the mic. We know that we're asking a lot, she began, her voice steady but emotional. But we also know that this platform has always been about the users. It's about building something sustainable, where creators can thrive without being exploited by algorithms. This is the future we want to build. Lin followed up, her words more pointed. We believe in freedom, but not the freedom to profit off others' misery. We believe in the freedom to create meaningful, authentic content that connects people, rather than just inflating our numbers. But not everyone was pleased. A group of prominent influencers, who had gained massive followings under the previous system, were growing increasingly agitated. They took to social media, voicing their displeasure with the new changes. Is this really about creators? One influencer tweeted. Or is it just about Musk wanting to control the narrative? I built my entire career on this platform, and now I'm being told to play by someone else's rules. The response was swift, with many users who had benefited from the previous system joining in the criticism. #SaveTheAlgorithm quickly began trending, a rallying cry for those who felt that the changes would harm their ability to make a living on the platform. Musk, ever the controversial figure, didn't back down. In a live interview, he responded to the criticism with his usual candor. The platform wasn't meant to serve a few, it was meant to serve everyone. If you're mad because you can't exploit the system anymore, maybe this isn't the right place for you. We're not here to make stars out of people who don't care about the users. As the public showdown unfolded, behind the scenes, the Creators Coalition worked overtime to refine the policies and address the concerns raised by both creators and users. While the new moderation system was gaining support, many were concerned that the platform would lose its organic, raw energy in favor of sanitized, corporate-controlled content. Lynn and Naomi spent countless hours consulting with Musk's team, advocating for an even more transparent system. They wanted to ensure that users had a say not only in the content that appeared on the platform but in the decisions that shaped its future. It was no longer just about getting more votes or making more money, it was about sustaining the integrity of the community. "There's a balance to be struck," Lynn said during one late-night strategy session. "We can't just take everything away from the people. We have to make sure they still feel like they're part of the process." Naomi nodded. "Exactly. If we make it too corporate, people will walk away. We need to give them ownership, real ownership, without sacrificing the quality of the content." The tension reached its breaking point when the new moderation system was finally rolled out across the platform. For weeks, users had been given a preview, testing the new features and suggesting improvements. The beta period had gone smoothly, but now, with millions of users logging in, the true impact of the changes would be felt. One of the first major tests came when a controversial viral video appeared on the platform. The video, which contained misleading information, began to spread rapidly. Under the old system, it would have been amplified by the algorithm, garnering millions of views within hours. But now, the new system would allow users to flag and vote on the content. If enough users flagged it, the video would be removed, and the creator would be given a warning. The platform held its breath as the content was flagged. Within minutes, the video was pulled down. This was the moment of truth, the first real test of the new system. Would users embrace the power they had been given, or would they rebel against the change? As the video was taken down, a wave of support flooded in. Users who had grown tired of seeing misleading content praised the system for its swift action. The shift was beginning to feel real. The platform was being reshaped, and the community seemed ready to embrace the change. After the moderation test, Musk addressed the platform's users in a brief video. Standing against a backdrop of Tesla and SpaceX achievements, he spoke directly to the community. "We've faced challenges. We've had setbacks. But the future of this platform isn't about me, or any one person. It's about all of us. And I believe we're on the right track. Together, we will continue to evolve." As he finished, Naomi and Lynn stood by his side, a symbolic gesture of unity. The battle was far from over, but they had taken the first steps toward creating the platform they had always dreamed of. The changes to the platform had begun to take root, but as the creators and users adapted to the new system, another challenge emerged, sustaining momentum in the face of pressure from critics who were determined to see the new direction fail. The platform had weathered the storm of the initial backlash, but it was far from smooth sailing. The larger influencers, many of whom had built their careers on the old system, weren't backing down. Some began to create counter-narratives, claiming that the new moderation policies stifled creativity and restricted freedom of expression. "There's a fine line between moderation and censorship," one influential creator tweeted. "We're all for protecting users, but at what cost? Are we going to start banning content because it doesn't fit into someone's idea of what's authentic?" The creators in the coalition were beginning to feel the pressure. The hopes they had of achieving a harmonious balance between freedom and accountability were now in jeopardy. It was clear that despite the momentum the changes had gained, there was still much work to do to convince everyone that the platform was truly evolving. However, there was hope, in the form of a powerful new feature, the Creator Spotlight. The Creator Spotlight was a new initiative designed to celebrate creators whose content exemplified the platform's new vision. Unlike the viral content that dominated the platform before, the Spotlight would focus on content that was engaging, thought-provoking, and unique. It was an effort to push the platform back toward its roots, showcasing creators who were prioritizing substance over sensationalism. The initiative launched with a wide-reaching campaign. Naomi, Lynn, and other prominent creators from the coalition played an active role, sharing their personal experiences with the new feature. They made sure to emphasize that the spotlight wasn't about perfection, it was about celebrating authenticity. Naomi posted a video introducing the new feature. In it, she said, "This is about more than just creating for the algorithm. It's about creating for us, for real people, and not just for the next viral hit. We want to spotlight creators who are pushing boundaries, telling real stories, and making a difference in the world. Lynn echoed her sentiment in a post of her own. The spotlight is a chance for creators to be seen and heard, not for the clicks, but for the value they bring to this space. It's about building a community, not just a following. The first round of creators to be featured in the Spotlight program was a diverse mix of voices. Some were well known within niche communities, while others were just starting to gain attention. But all of them shared one thing in common: they produced thoughtful, engaging content that prioritized quality over quantity. One of the first creators to be highlighted was Evelyn, a filmmaker who used her platform to shed light on social justice issues. She had always been frustrated by the lack of visibility for creators like her, whose content didn't fit the mainstream mold. Under the old system, her videos often struggled to find an audience, overshadowed by more sensational content. Evelyn's feature in the spotlight was a game changer. Her viewership surged as the community rallied behind the initiative. Her content, which explored the intersection of race, inequality, and culture, resonated deeply with many viewers who had long felt ignored by the platform's previous algorithmic priorities. Evelyn posted a message of gratitude on her channel, thanking her supporters and the platform for amplifying voices that mattered. "This isn't just about me. It's about every creator who's been overlooked because they didn't play the algorithm game. This is about creating a real space for meaningful work." The impact of the spotlight was felt almost immediately. Engagement on the platform shifted, with more users interacting with content that reflected the values of the coalition's vision: quality over quantity, authenticity over viral trends. Despite the success of the spotlight, the larger creators who had built their careers in the old system were not backing down. They began to ramp up their efforts to discredit the changes, arguing that the platform was undermining the very principles of free speech and creativity. One high-profile creator, Mason, known for his controversial takes on current events, voiced his discontent with the new system. He tweeted, "When you allow too much moderation, you end up stifling the voice of the people. Content should be about self-expression, not about pleasing an algorithm or fitting into a narrative. The platform is becoming a safe space for conformity." His tweet gained traction quickly, with many users agreeing that the new policies were beginning to feel like a form of censorship. It was clear that the rift between the larger creators and the Creators Coalition was deepening. Naomi and Lynn were well aware of the growing tensions. They spent hours behind the scenes strategizing how to navigate the pushback while staying true to their mission. Their ultimate goal was still the same: to create a platform where all creators, regardless of their following size, could find a voice. "We can't let them make us back down," Lynn said in one private meeting. "We're not just fighting for the creators we know, we're fighting for the ones who haven't found their voice yet. The ones who need a platform where they can be themselves, without worrying about getting lost in the noise." Naomi nodded. "It's tough, but we're seeing results. The Creator Spotlight is working. We just have to keep pushing." As the tension continued to build, an unexpected proposal came from one of the more established members of the Creators Coalition, Adrian, a tech entrepreneur with a long history of working with large platforms. Adrian suggested a radical idea: a new partnership model between larger creators and the coalition. Rather than pushing the large influencers out of the conversation, Adrian proposed creating a new system where both the established and the up-and-coming creators could coexist and help each other. The idea was simple: larger creators could mentor smaller creators in exchange for a more balanced system of content distribution. Instead of the algorithms prioritizing viral content, creators with larger followings would actively help amplify smaller voices in exchange for more ethical exposure, helping to sustain the integrity of the community. This idea was met with mixed reactions. Some of the larger creators saw it as a power grab, while others saw it as a chance to get back in the game without losing their influence. But the coalition leaders, including Naomi and Lynn, saw potential. "We need to bring everyone to the table," Naomi said. "This is the only way we're going to get the system to work. The old way wasn't working for anyone. Lin added, "It's about finding common ground, not about winning or losing. If we want this platform to be something real, we all need to change our mindset." The proposal was officially pitched to Musk and his team, and discussions began to take place behind closed doors. As the community waited with bated breath for the next announcement, the creators knew one thing for certain: the fight for authenticity was far from over. But with each passing day, as more voices were spotlighted, and more creators began to see the value in this new system, they were reminded that the platform's future was theirs to shape. The road ahead would be difficult, but Naomi, Lin, and the entire Creators Coalition were prepared to continue the fight, no matter how long it took. The momentum from the spotlight was undeniable, but just as the platform was beginning to find its rhythm, a scandal broke that threatened to derail everything. It would test the integrity of the Creators Coalition and whether the platform's new direction could survive under fire. As the partnership model between larger and smaller creators began to take shape, the platform was riding high on success. The positive feedback from users was overwhelming. Creators were beginning to see the benefits of the changes, with many smaller accounts gaining the exposure they had long deserved. But beneath the surface, a new challenge was emerging, one that no one could have predicted. It all started with an anonymous leak to a major news outlet. The leak revealed a disturbing truth: one of the key members of the Creators Coalition, Jesse, a well-respected influencer and advocate for smaller creators, had been secretly negotiating with some of the largest media companies in the world to undermine the new system. According to the leak, Jesse had been privately working on a deal that would allow major media conglomerates to skirt the new moderation rules and regain control over the platform's algorithm. The report alleged that Jesse had been offering to consult on ways to exploit the system to ensure that big-budget media content would be prioritized over smaller, independent creators. The reaction was swift and brutal. The platform's community erupted in outrage. Many creators felt betrayed, especially those who had believed in the integrity of the Creators Coalition. Jesse, who had once been seen as a hero to smaller creators, was now labeled a traitor. Naomi, Lin, and the rest of the coalition were caught off guard. They had worked so hard to build trust, and now it felt like it was all slipping through their fingers. Jesse's involvement in the scandal was undeniable, but the question remained: how far had the betrayal gone? Were other members of the Creators Coalition involved? Could the platform survive the fallout? Naomi, visibly shaken, addressed the platform in a live broadcast. "I'm not here to make excuses. We've always told you that this journey would be difficult, but we never imagined it would come to this. We are committed to investigating this issue fully and transparently. If anyone has betrayed the values we stand for, we will hold them accountable." Lin stood by her side, her voice firm. "This is a wake-up call for all of us. It's not just about protecting the platform, it's about protecting the trust that we've built with you, the creators. We will ensure that the platform remains a safe and fair place for everyone." Despite their words, the damage was done. The public trust in the Creators Coalition was shattered, and the leak soon began to overshadow all the progress they had made. Critics flooded social media, accusing the platform of being a corporate puppet show, that the promises of fairness and transparency were just smoke and mirrors, designed to lure in creators before the real players could swoop in. In the days following the leak, the Creators Coalition was divided. Some members rallied behind Naomi and Lin, determined to prove that the platform could still be salvaged. Others began to distance themselves from the scandal, refusing to be associated with what had happened. Jesse, of course, denied the allegations, claiming that the leak was a misunderstanding and that they were merely discussing potential partnerships to keep the platform profitable. But the damage was already done. Public opinion was quick to turn on him, and the scandal became a media frenzy. Musk, for his part, remained unusually quiet. His silence only fueled the speculation. Was he involved in the negotiations? Was this a move to bring corporate power back into the fold? Was it all part of a larger plan? Naomi and Lin felt the weight of the moment. They had worked tirelessly to bring authenticity back to the platform, and now it felt like it was all slipping away. They couldn't afford to let this scandal define them. "This is the moment we've been waiting for," Naomi said, pacing in the conference room with Lynn. "We can either fold under pressure, or we can show the world that we can rise above this. We need to get ahead of the narrative." Lynn nodded. "We need to focus on the users. If we let them down now, it's over. We need to remind them why we're doing this in the first place." Naomi's mind was racing, but one thing was clear: they couldn't do this alone. In an unexpected move, Naomi reached out to Adrian, the tech entrepreneur who had proposed the partnership model between larger and smaller creators. Adrian had been one of the few members of the Creators Coalition to not be caught up in the scandal, and Naomi believed he could help stabilize the situation. "We need a unified front, Adrian," Naomi said in a tense phone call. "If we don't come together now, it's over. We can't let one bad apple spoil the whole bunch." Adrian, who had been quietly observing the events unfold, agreed. "You're right. We've come too far to let this derail everything. But we'll need to act quickly. If we don't address this with transparency and accountability, the platform could lose everything." Adrian suggested a public summit where all members of the Creators Coalition would address the scandal head-on. The summit would be open to the public, allowing users to ask questions and voice their concerns directly to the creators and Musk. This would be their chance to set the record straight and rebuild trust with the platform's community. Naomi agreed. "It's time to face the music." The Creators Coalition Summit was broadcast live to millions. The summit had an open, town hall format. Naomi, Lynn, Musk, Adrian, and other members of the coalition sat on stage, ready to confront the allegations and answer questions. As the summit began, Naomi took the mic. "We know that many of you are angry, disappointed, and confused. We've let you down. But we promise you, this is not the end of our mission. It's just the beginning of a new chapter, one where we are more accountable than ever before." Lynn continued, "We've made mistakes, and we own them. But we're not backing down. We will restore the integrity of this platform. And we will make sure that every creator, big or small, has a voice in shaping the future." Musk spoke last, his voice calm but resolute. "We are not here to play games. We're here to change the world. If that means making hard choices, so be it. But we're not going to let this platform be taken over by corporate interests again. Not on my watch." The summit didn't immediately resolve the tension, but it marked a turning point. For the first time since the scandal broke, the community saw that the Creators Coalition was committed to transparency and accountability. There was still a long road ahead, but the fight was far from over. The summit had brought clarity to the chaos, but the road to redemption was far from simple. The aftermath of the scandal continued to echo through the platform, and it was clear that restoring faith would require more than just words. It would take action, unity, and a renewed commitment to the values they had fought so hard to establish. After the summit, the platform saw a temporary surge of discontent. Users were skeptical. The leak had left a mark, and even with the promises of accountability, many creators were hesitant to trust the platform again. Naomi, Lynn, and the rest of the Creators Coalition knew that their actions would have to speak louder than their words. The first step in rebuilding was to address the core issues that led to the scandal in the first place. Naomi and Lynn worked tirelessly behind the scenes, reaching out to members of the community, both large and small creators, to gain insight into their frustrations and concerns. It was clear that there were deep-seated fears that the new system was still vulnerable to corporate influence. Trust had been shattered. The Creators Coalition was determined not to let the platform become just another playground for the rich and powerful. They set a clear, audacious goal: the platform would be fully transparent in its decision-making, and no amount of corporate pressure would sway them from their mission. However, trust wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. It would take time, and every single creator would need to feel like their voice truly mattered. It wasn't just about restoring the old system, it was about creating something new that felt more inclusive and sustainable. In the weeks that followed, the platform rolled out several changes aimed at solidifying its commitment to fairness and transparency. They introduced new policies to ensure that creators could see exactly how their content was being moderated and how the algorithm worked. There would be no more mystery. Every decision made by the platform would be documented and accessible to the public. Moreover, the platform launched an open forum where creators and users could submit feedback and suggestions directly to the development team. This forum would serve as a permanent, interactive space where the community could be actively involved in the evolution of the platform. Naomi, Lynn, and the coalition understood that accountability was essential. They held monthly meetings with users, open to anyone who wanted to participate. These meetings served not only to address concerns but also to celebrate the positive changes that had already taken place. They recognized that while they couldn't erase the past, they could shape the future through transparency and collaboration. As the platform continued to roll out its reforms, the Creator Spotlight initiative became more significant than ever. What began as a small feature to uplift lesser-known creators had blossomed into a symbol of what the platform stood for: diversity, authenticity, and equal opportunity. Evelyn, the filmmaker who had gained so much from the spotlight, was invited to speak at one of the open forums. "I've never felt more seen as a creator," she said in her speech. "The platform gave me an opportunity to share stories that matter, to connect with an audience that cares. This is what the internet should be, about real stories, not just clicks." Her words resonated with thousands of creators watching, many of whom had been inspired by the new direction. The spotlight had become more than just a feature, it had become a movement, a rallying point for creators who were committed to quality, substance, and authenticity. But the true test would come when the largest creators, the ones who had once fought tooth and nail against the new system, were invited back into the fold. Would they return to the platform, or had they already moved on? It was at one of the open forums that the answer came. A familiar name flashed across the live stream: Mason, the controversial creator who had openly criticized the changes. "I've been watching, and I've been listening," Mason began, standing on the stage in front of the camera. "I'll be honest, I wasn't sure this would work. I thought the whole thing was a joke. But the changes, they're real. And it's clear now that this platform actually wants to do something different." Mason's words were met with a mix of surprise and applause. It was the first time that many of the platform's most vocal critics had publicly acknowledged the effort to change. Mason continued, "I've decided to return. Not because I think it's perfect, but because I see the effort. I see that the future of the platform is being shaped by real people, not just algorithms and corporate interests." The room erupted in applause. It wasn't just Mason's return that was significant, it was the message that came with it. Reform was possible, and change could happen even in the face of deep skepticism. The platform's progress didn't stop there. As more large creators returned, they began to realize that their success was no longer tied to chasing viral trends or trying to outdo one another. Instead, the platform had created a space where creators could thrive by being authentic and meaningful in their content. The influence of the larger creators began to shift. They no longer felt like they had to cater to an algorithm that only cared about quick profits. Instead, they began to mentor smaller creators, sharing their experiences and helping to elevate the next generation. It was a true community, one where all creators were valued for the quality of their work, not just their popularity. Naomi and Lynn were often in the background, quietly watching this evolution unfold. Their work wasn't done yet, but they could finally feel the momentum shifting in their favor. They had weathered the storm and had come out the other side stronger than ever. As Naomi watched the new wave of creators come together at one of the platform's events, she knew that the platform had become something bigger than just a business, it had become a movement for authenticity. They had fought to make this space one where creativity could flourish, and they had finally won. "You know," Naomi said to Lynn as they watched the event unfold, "this feels like the beginning of something really big." Lynn smiled. "We've only just begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?